back to another episode of Collector's Quest. I'm Tyler here with Johnny. Johnny, what's going on? Back to the regular voice.
Back to the regular voice. Hey, Tyler, this is Johnny, and just telling you real quick, hey, it's the new year. Happy New Year, Tyler.
Happy New Year, Johnny. It's 2025 now.
It is 2025, and man, that feels like a very weird number to be in. I remember thinking about what future years would be like as a child, and I don't think I ever really thought about 2025. Like, my brain would go to like 2020 because that was a nice number, but now it's like we're halfway through the 2020s, or, you know, moving into that anyways, and that feels weird.
It's 2025. Star Citizen is not completely out yet.
Oh.
That's where we're
at.
No
flying cars. Yeah, no flying cars either. We didn't make
no
it.
flying cars, sure.
I think that someone has to say that, like, they're obligated to say it. Like every year.
Johnny, I'm mad.
Oh, why?
I don't know how big this controversy hit the public. I'm going to guess it didn't. Johnny, I'm a casual chess fan.
Oh, yes, this reached me.
Did it reach me? Did it reach you via me, though?
No, it sure did not.
Oh, okay, good.
I brought it up to you in our chat first, actually.
So people are mad. Because I think I told you right after it happened, because I was watching it live and I was mad. Yeah, Johnny, I casually follow some chess, I follow some pinball, I follow some basketball highlights. But there's like 2 chess tournaments a year, and I've been watching them live. And watching live chess is like almost the most boring thing you can do. But
sure is. And I don't care what enthusiasts tell me about how good they've made it for viewing now. It's still rough.
So it's really hard because high level chess, it could be like literally one move takes 40 minutes. And so you have like grandmasters commentating, and they'll be explaining like what could happen in this next move for 40 minutes. And that's like the best if you're an idiot who really wants to understand something, but then it's also too high level for you. So you really won't understand anything that's going on. And then when you get down to what I want to talk about, which is blitz chess, it's 3 minutes for a player for the entire game, where moves are happening so fast that you also can't comprehend it. So no matter how fast the game is going, if you're not like an absolute master at chess, you can't fully understand what's happening. So it's just the worst. It's the worst spectator sport. They'll never make it happen. They're never going to make pinball happen. I think StarCraft, it's pretty understandable. Like, you can kind of understand what's going on, even if you have no idea what's happening in StarCraft. And then the more you understand, like, you kind of understand deeper. Spectator chess is just never happening. Johnny.
Is that why you're mad, though?
Because that's not why I'm mad. The FIDE Blitz Chess World Championships just happened. The final round, it was like a best of 7 games. They were tied at the end of 7 games. They played 3 tiebreakers. Keep in mind, these games, literally 10-minute long games. These are almost the shortest chess games you could possibly play. And I realized that chess people would be like, well, every game is stressful, and well, it's a lot of mental effort. After 3 games, the 2 players that were at the top, the 2 finalists, agreed to split the title of world champion and just share it. Yeah. So they're co-champions. That is not in the rules. This isn't like a tournament where you could split the pot. That is not in the rules. It's like you were watching the World Cup, and the guys, they tied at the end of games. Instead of doing a shootout, they're just like, actually, we're both World Cup champions.
So can I devil's advocate a little bit?
Sure.
So Magnus and his opponent know each other very well. They've played a lot of matches against each other. They've been playing each other since like chess camp before they were even teenagers, right? So they kind of know how these games are going to go. And it was already very late at night. It was already after midnight, right? When they got to this point.
It wasn't. I think it ended around 8 p.m.
I mean, it was, regardless, it was late. It's a lot of chess. And if you're then playing chess when you're just tired, and that to me, that doesn't really feel like a match indicative of skill. That's more of like mental endurance. And if you're into that, that's fine. But they've also played each other.
That's part of being an athlete. Sometimes your games are going to go long. Sometimes you got to be in there till the 10th round.
Sure,
it's
but
there are championships.
I'm devil's advocating, so just relax. they've already been there a long time, and they don't feel like that there's a good deterministic way that they're going to get to a conclusion in any reasonable amount of time. They feel like they're just going to be playing until someone falls asleep. And that, like, is that good for it too? They won because the opponent passed out?
They played 3 tiebreaker games. Literally, a game takes 10 minutes. It was not going to go all night. If they played another 3 tiebreaker games, it probably would have been decisive for someone.
You think so? Because that's not how they felt. And I mean, I'll excuse.
No, they each had too
I'll
much.
Excuse us for not being grandmasters at chess, and like maybe just taking their word on this one.
Fuck.
Do I love a concession, a draw into like I don't. Doesn't mean I don't understand how it happened. I don't love it though.
How did the governing body let this happen? You can't just let the 2 players be like, actually, we agreed to split it.
Do you think after the faux pas of the day before, they were really interested in fighting with Magnus?
So yes, that's the problem. To keep us going on this train of conversation.
Yeah.
Yes. So Magnus, the best player in the world, is in a constant feud with FIDE, the governing body of chess. And this just seemed like some weird power move that he was pulling just to like show that he controls the strings of chess. He's just like, I'm going to make up a rule and they're going to go with it because I'm worth too much money to them. I could do whatever I want.
So you think it's that, and you don't think it was like, you don't think this is at all a response to them power tripping the day before and disqualifying him for wearing jeans in a we'll very loosely call this a sport real quick, where you sit down, even though he was in a sports coat and a nice button up, and you only see him from the waist up. They're like, oh, you're in denim today. And that's like, because the main guy wasn't there. So some lower, like still high level, but lower than the top rung, decide to pull a power move.
So the conspiracy theory is that Magnus did this to make FIDE look like a stupid governing body for allowing him to split the title. Even though he suggested it, he's making them look stupid because they agreed to it.
So you don't think there was any carryover from the day before?
Oh, I mean, sure, it could be. I have no idea.
And you don't think that was them being ridiculous? And like, also, like, why would you, if you're in a feud with this guy and you need him to show up, why would you shoot the golden goose? Like, what are you even doing? FIDE's ridiculous.
I love like, I love that this is what makes the news. It's like, there must be people, I know there are people in the pinball world who are like, they're actually trying to make pinball a thing, unlike ESPN, the Ocho type level, like getting regular people to watch pinball. Like, guys, it's not going to happen. And there must be people like that for chess. And the only time chess makes the news is like, someone got disqualified for wearing pants. And by the way, there's 2 world champions of the same championship.
Yeah. And also, I understand there's a large portion of our audience who just completely checked out and they're like, what are these guys what are these guys talking about? Yeah, this is nerdy even by our standards.
It is. So it's because I'm normally the non-confrontational millennial who thinks that we should all hold hands and transcend into the Star Trek future where everyone gets along and it's all wholesome. And that was like the millennial reaction to this. It's like, oh, it's so wholesome. 2 lifelong friends are sharing the championship together. Whereas the Gen Xers and the boomers are like, fucking participation trophies. This is a blood sport. I hate this. And even though I'm a millennial, I'm siding with the boomers on this one.
Right, and the Gen Xer,
turn everything into generational conflict. By the way, Johnny, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I understand that. You're a weird meme unto yourself. Anyways, we can move off of this. Hey, Tyler, I discovered something recently that was pretty upsetting for me.
What was that?
Do you know what little people are? And I don't mean as a pejorative to people of a small stature. This is a brand of toys.
You can't make a toy brand called Little People. What are you talking about?
Yes, you've seen them. They come in like farmhouses. They got that. This is just what they're called. They've been around forever. Definitely
okay. They're like a Fisher Price. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know they're called Little People.
Definitely seen these. Yeah, that's their name. You've definitely seen them. Every kid had some version of these, or picked one up once in their life. It's
They're
usually
not
like
at
a
all related to
farmhouse and a
Legos,
horse.
but if I see them, I'm like, oh, you don't have Legos, you have like the shitty Fisher Price stuff instead.
Well, that's like the kids a rung below Lego and like not quite Duplo. I feel like everybody had the farmhouse, or you knew some kid with the farmhouse, and they're like, why do you still have that? You're like 8. You could probably let that go. Anyways, so Tyler, there is a collectible version of these things for like every IP you can think of. Like not every IP, obviously, but like way more than you would think. Like, for instance, did you know Squid Game has a little collector's pack of little people?
That's just not a thing. What are you talking about? Oh my God, there's Halo.
It is a thing. Squid Game. Okay, Tyler, I'm not kidding. It's real.
I don't understand. Like, obviously, the 2-year-olds that this is marketed towards won't understand anything licensed. Like, you can get them a Sesame Street Little People set. They won't appreciate it.
Yes.
But what adults are like, oh, little people, that's what I want to collect.
So I think it just like leaned in to the properties, and like you get them for your kids and you want to like get cool ones. And then they just realized they started making like popular franchises that would sell more. And then they like got people hooked into it. So let me just run down some properties that Little People collector packs of. All right. They're not super expensive. They're like $25. Okay. You can get like a pack of 4 on average. Imagine every Little People is about $5. Okay. That's about the going rate, $5 to $6. Okay.
They like to be called a little person in the individuals.
Sure. Anyways, NSYNC has some. The Office has multiple packs. Multiple. Mean Girls has the Christmas scene. Harry Potter, The Wizard of Oz, Wicked, they released a pack and that went nuts. People bought the shit out of that one. Very expensive right now. The Nightmare Before Christmas. Breaking Bad, Tyler, has Little People. Schitt's Creek.
Someone at Fisher Price is cooking here, because they're trying to break their boring toy into like the millennial tchotchke market of people who just buy shit because it's a brand I like, I gotta buy it. And you know what? They probably had some success. Like, they're not Legos, but I bet there's some people now who collect Little People when it used to exclusively be a toy for 2-year-olds. Yeah.
So I'm going to go on just for a little longer, then we can move on just because this is ridiculous. Friends, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Saved by the Bell, A Christmas Story, Outlander, Hocus Pocus, Lost, The Big Bang Theory, I Love Lucy, The Golden Girls, Halo, Wednesday, Run DMC, Avatar The Last Airbender, The Big Lebowski, E.T., Elton John, Ted Lasso, Star Trek, Parks and Recreation, The Notebook. What?
The Notebook?
Yes. Cobra Kai, Seinfeld, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, The Boys, Salt and Pepper, Barbie, El Chavo. El Chavo.
Oh, dude, El Chavo of El Chavo Kart fame.
Yes. Elf, Suicide Squad, and that's enough. Like, I was off my rocker today, just like thinking about these things existing in the world. And I was like, what is happening? My wife and I, like, we would see them randomly, like, what's going on with Little People? Like, we saw a Stranger Things pack, we're like, that's weird. And then we saw like a Harry Potter pack at Costco, we're like, that is weird too. And then I was like, my wife asked me about them, so I just started doing a little research, and I was very upset at what I found. And then
you found The Boys and Suicide Squad.
And El Chavo.
And then you bought and now you're going to be like, and then Tyler, I bought the Gremlins.
I did buy the Gremlins.
God Tyler. Damn it.
Yeah. The Gremlins. I bought them for my wife.
So, I mean, they've got enough that they must be like at least moderately successful for these things that must cost almost $0 to produce. So some guy was just like, hey, look at Funko Pops. We've got a thing that's basically like that, but smaller and even cheaper and shittier. Let's just spend a bunch of money on licensing and see what happens.
Yeah. I don't know if they're shittier than Funkos. They might be on par.
They're toys for
Big Lebowski.
2-year-olds. I mean, whatever. I mean, Funko Pop.
I
I'm
mean,
not going to.
they're not even toys though. They're not really toys. They're just things that sit on your shelf. They don't do anything.
I mean, that's
they're like
toy.
a Funko Pop.
A toy doesn't have to do something.
No, this is a decoration, Tyler. These are just decorations.
They're Target birds.
Yeah. Anyways,
all right.
That's a thing that exists, and I just wanted to tell you about it a little bit.
Thank you for letting me know about this soulless collecting category that is literally just random licenses that you're hoping you remember from the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. All right. Look forward to us tracking down a Fisher-Price Little People collector. I feel like you could have the entire set for like $500. Like, how many could there possibly be?
There was a lot, Tyler. Didn't you just hear the list I ran down? Some of them have multiple
are you telling me that these are all selling for like above MSRP in the used market?
No, I did look into it because I knew you would ask, and they are relatively inexpensive, except for like the Wicked ones are the most expensive ones. There's a couple of store exclusives too, which I found weird. Like, hey, this is a Walgreens exclusive. I was like, what the shit is happening?
Oh, you got the Team USA Olympic set? Why are there so many of these?
I told you.
Guys, all right, you know what?
Didn't believe...
As a segue to this episode, I need to tell everyone, I love Nintendo games. I love the NES. I played an NES game most of today. Just because you identify with a property or a movie or a TV series or a celebrity or something from your childhood, you don't have to go buy merchandise for that fucking thing. You could just have those memories. You could go on the internet and look at a picture of that thing and be like, yeah, Gremlins, I remember that thing. That's great. You don't have to go buy the Gremlins Game Boy game for $150. You could just have those memories. And you certainly don't need to go buy the Squid Game's Little People set from Target for $25. Just because you like Squid Game.
Tyler, do you want the Squid Game one?
I don't want the Squid Game one.
What if I send it to you?
I literally will donate that to Goodwill. I do not need the Squid Game Little People in my house. If you've already sent that to me, it's going to Goodwill. Actually, I see it selling used for $25. I might put it on eBay.
All right. Yeah, no, I did not send that to you. And
thank you.
You know, if I buy you anything, I always send everything with the receipt because I am a firm believer. If you get something and you don't like it, please take it back. Like, here's the receipt. I'm not going to feel bad. I would rather you just go get something you like. That was my goal.
All right.
Anyways.
Speaking of
the most
properties,
expensive ones are like $80, just so you know.
$80.
So it's not
I mean, that's not crazy compared to Funko Pops, but like, there must be almost no secondhand market for this.
No, I don't think people know. Like, I collect a lot of dumb shit. I just found out about this. So, like, what are we talking about here?
I wonder if there's like a forum or like a social media group or like a Discord channel somewhere. Is it just like 8 guys who are super into it? Because I remember when I first started collecting the Penny Arcade, the PAX pins, when they just came out with it, like 2013 and 2014, it was literally like 15 guys in a forum who like genuinely cared about tracking and collecting all this kind of stuff. So there must be just like, it really speaks to a couple dozen people who are actually keeping up with it and keeping the list going. And then everyone else is just like, oh, Squid Game at Target. And they just buy it and they don't even think about it as little people.
Yeah, it was very similar to when I started collecting Sega CD. It was like 15 guys in a forum who were collecting it.
But you know what? If we could find a Fisher-Price Little People spreadsheet that is up to date with all of these, the full collection in it, they will be a step ahead of limited run games.
They will be. But Tyler, as I know you want to transition us, the interesting thing is they're capturing nostalgia, right? And they focused a lot on 80s properties. I don't know if you noticed that, Tyler. A lot of 80s going on over here. Or
I mean, there's a lot of 90s too. I saw Saved by the Bell. I saw Seinfeld, The Office.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm anti-transitioning. Yeah, wow, there was a lot of 80s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, you saw some of those Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle ones, right?
The Wizard of Oz from the 30s. It seems like there maybe is no era. I Love Lucy, the 50s.
There's Transformers, there's Turtles, There's a lot of stuff in a lot of different eras. Anyways, the point is they are trying to capture nostalgia. And that had me thinking, especially as we hit this new year, Tyler, and as we were going into the new year, I was like, man, the 80s are now actually like kind of a real long time ago, Tyler. That's 45 years ago, 1980 was upon us. And that had me thinking about, okay, well, like when it was like 1985 to 1950, that was like only 35 years. So it was like even longer than that gap. And it feels like not many properties transitioned from the 50s forward. I know you disagree with that. But I don't feel like that many made it compared to like what we have now. Like we still build on these properties that essentially, I feel like the 80s might be the most nostalgic era. Like they built properties and like it's where they learned what IPs could truly become in their final forms. And
I kind of disagree with that.
Do you? Okay,
I know
well,
that you're trying to
why.
take that angle, but I think if you asked average people on the street what's the most nostalgic cartoon, I feel like if you ask that today, the most popular answer might be SpongeBob SquarePants, just based on the demographics of people alive. I don't think they're going back to the 80s.
I don't think necessarily most people are going, but I think the most properties were like born out of the 80s and like what the 80s built. Like without the 80s, then the rest of it doesn't happen. Like that's where they learn to, oh, this is how we do properties and keep them moving forward.
Sure. I see. I'm not enough of a pop culture wizard of the 60s and 70s to know what the 80s did differently, as opposed to like the 80s is just when a lot of things that I'm interested in kind of came into fruition.
Well, there's going to be an inherent bias because again, that's when, in 1985 I was 7. So it was like, 6 and 7. So it's like peak childhood, young childhood anyways. And then I was a teenager in the 90s. So these two eras are like firmly blended into my brain as the most thing. So yes, there's a lot of implied bias there. But when I look back, it's like, okay, yeah, like I Love Lucy, The Wizard of Oz, like Flintstones. There's some things that came forward into the 80s, but not as much. And they like tried to capture things and you to like, I forget, but like Charlie's Angels and stuff from the 70s, they try and like bring these movies out in the like early 2000s and they weren't as successful. And, more people were like, remakes. And now it's just like, I think initially that sentiment was there. It's still there for sure. A lot. Like people definitely, especially the boomers love to say, you can't make anything new. But now I think like stuff comes out and people don't even realize it's remakes now. Like we've moved far enough and it's just, all these 80s properties are just have moved in and they're just here to stay. And they feel like once you have a brand, then you ride or die with it forever. No matter what happens, you're just like, we have to defend this brand, or you have to make something based on a property because a built-in market is too expensive to create. So use the brand. And so that's part of what has happened. Anyways, these are my thoughts on it. And because of all these thoughts, I was like, what would it be like if you tried to collect the 80s, Tyler? So like prominent franchises or things that were born in the 80s or things that were popular in the 80s, and you wanted to collect an item from the 80s that represented that property. I don't know if that as a sentence makes a lot of sense to people. So, like if you were saying, okay, like Batman 1989, the movie, there's a Nintendo game. There were Batman games before it, but I think Batman 1989, cultural phenomenon, again, titled 1989, so it is the 80s. And there was a NES game that came out in 1989 as well. So you have Batman 89. Boom. Okay. The Cabbage Patch Kids. There's a Cabbage Patch game. These kinds of things. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, Johnny. Before we jump the shark, speaking of sharks, kind of blockbusters became a thing with Jaws, right? And so it's like a whole combination of better marketing in the 80s and also maybe more money put into properties like that, because how many blockbusters can you think of this 70s besides like Star Wars and Jaws compared to the 80s? Obviously
more commercials, more people out there to be into a thing. There's like a wide swath of things, more televisions in homes, like not just a television in home, but more televisions in homes, the advent of computers to then go watch the old things, more
VHS.
Access. Yes.
Video games,
So,
yeah.
like-
Okay, so it's like the whole media revolution of the 80s. There is something to it. You're right. I'm sure like all these formats came out in the 70s, but let's be real, like they boomed in the 80s.
Yeah, a thing can come out in the 70s, but like where it boomed is not necessarily
Yeah.
the thing.
So Johnny,
Anyway.
you need to convince me that you can collect the 80s. How does that differ from I do collect the 80s. I have so many NES games.
You have some. I think a lot of us do, and I was like, okay, if you went and you were like looking at if you wanted to collect quintessential 80s items and properties from the 80s, what would you go buy? And again, they have to have been made in the 80s as part of my thing. So it's like you're like, oh, Batman, I'll just go buy Arkham Asylum. It's like that's not really what I mean. It's like I want you to go buy a Batman game from the 80s because there's a Batman game in the 80s. So I made a list of these.
Let's start with Batman. Did Batman come out in the 80s? I thought the game came out in 1990. I could be wrong.
The game might have come out in.
It's not even on our list. Oh, it is. Oh no, you put it at 1989. I bet you guessed, and you're just saying that's when the movie came out.
That's I know that's when the movie came out. It's 1989. I did not check the release date of the game because I thought it was just a good example to kind of like, it's a Batman 89. That's what we call it as Batman fans. So lots of people, Michael Keaton is their Batman. That's what they'll tell you. That's like a phrase that gets thrown around. Anyways, you could say the same thing with Pitfall, Spider-Man, Popeye. Well, not Popeye. Popeye's a bad example. The Smurfs. Anyways, there's a lot of these things. And I wanted to just talk about them. I don't know how you want to go through the list that I've assembled. You can fight with me on games. You can tell me, no, it doesn't count, or it counts. Again, this is if you were going to collect stuff from the 80s. And if it's not on this list, I definitely could have missed it. Also, there's a lot of stuff from the 80s. So like we just didn't put everything on there. It's already a large list. Or didn't have a thing that came out, didn't have a game in the 80s. So like Barbie is one that like you think, oh, Barbie, that's like a really good one. And yeah, like it was definitely booming in the 80s, really popular in the 90s. So it's like kind of right on the cusp. But there is a good Commodore 64 one. But if you wanted the NES game came out in 1991. So I would tell you to go buy the Commodore 64 game, which is awesome, by the way. Like the cover of that game, it's got one of the Epix covers. You looked at it earlier. It's like the best looking Barbie game as far as like box art that there is. Hands down, not close.
It's also pretty cool.
Expensive.
I mean, all right. I don't know. Are we talking about the Barbie game, Johnny?
Yeah, we can talk about the Barbie game. That's fine. Like as a
no,
example.
I think you should probably categorize this list and go through it in terms of broad categories. And I'm gonna let you take over, Johnny. Although I do remember the 80s, and it was super cool, best decade I've ever lived through. I was there for 6 months. I'm gonna let you take control, and then when you say something, I'm gonna fight you about it because I disagree with you, and that's how the conflict of the Collector's Quest podcast goes.
All right, so most of these are broken into.
And also, I've picked out a list of 12 franchises that in the past 5 years have had games sell for over $10,000. And whenever you bring one of those up, I'm gonna bring up what the high-end speculative market, who maybe knows more about the 1980s than they really know about video games, the types of games they have bought in the past 5 years. So when we hit on one of the true key franchises.
And I will just remind everyone that those people don't dictate how we collect. Okay,
those people
are their own people doing their own thing.
Look at all of us now. Everyone has all the black box games. We all have them all sealed. I had the black box
games before that, and
you didn't have them all sealed though. Now we all went out and spent $179,000 on a Clue Land. It sucks, but we all had to do it.
That's true. I did have to sell my house to fund this, but it was well worth it because at least I have these sealed hang tabs. Whew, thank goodness. Anyways, all right. So I have a couple different categories in here, and they're not all equal. So we have cartoons, like properties, again, just based off cartoons, people that are games I just threw in because of celebrity, general celebrity. It doesn't have to be like, this person is a celebrity, like Wayne Gretzky even though he's an athlete, I put it under the category of celebrity, just so we know what we're talking about. Comic books, essential 80s games, like quintessential 80s games. So things that were kind of made from the 80s and became popular properties still going on now. Movies, because that's a big one. Toys, there's a few that I just said like, hey, these are definitely just toys. And I want to touch on them. And TV shows. Again, a lot of these crossovers. Some, like, I think will have a toy and a TV show and a movie, like, so, and have celebrities in them. So don't get too married to the categories if you feel like I miscategorized it. Okay.
All right.
Fair enough. All right. I'm going to just start with cartoons because that's the first one I have on the list. And this one I don't feel good about. And I don't actually like it on the list. Popeye. I feel like Popeye was a little bit popular in the 80s. Just became a very popular video game franchise in the 80s, though. So how do you feel about Popeye?
That's an absolutely terrible pick. I wouldn't even call it a popular video game franchise.
It has like 15 video games.
99 out of 100 people who would recognize Donkey Kong wouldn't recognize Popeye as a video game.
Fair enough. So, like I said, didn't feel good about it, but it was like, and it had a movie with Robin Williams during the 80s. So I was like, Popeye kind of had a resurgence in the 80s. But again, that was, I feel like, a clumsier attempt of them trying to go back in time and look at properties that they thought might be able to carry through. Popeye, one of the less successful examples. And there's a lot of weirdly expensive Popeye games out there too, like in Japan. So just watch out for Popeye games if you are a weird Popeye collector. The Smurfs. Tyler, you familiar with the Smurfs?
They're the little blue people. They're little people. The Little People Collector series from Fisher Price.
Yeah, I don't know if they have Smurfs. They might, though. We could probably check. It had a couple of successful games. It's had movies still going out. The Smurfs has so many video games. You would not believe how many games the Smurfs property has created. Created a bunch in the 80s. Probably the most notable one is Smurf, not the Smurfs, for the ColecoVision and the Atari 2600. And that's around $60 if you want to go buy that. So that's one based off a cartoon. Again, toys for that. This one you could go either way. A couple of these you can go either way. G.I. Joe, Tyler, you can go cartoon on this or you can go toy. I think the more you know about this, you will say that they lean into multiple categories. I'm sorry. Anyways, there is a game. Go ahead.
G.I. Joe's a toy. You can't, this isn't like debatable at like, oh, is it a cartoon? Is it a toy? It's a toy.
It's a cartoon.
It's a toy. That's like saying like, oh, Pokemon, it's a trading card game. No, Pokemon's a video game. Pokemon's not a cartoon. Pokemon's not a trading card game. Pokemon's a video game, and everything else is spun off of the video game. The thing it is originally is what it is.
G.I. Joe was a cartoon originally.
There is no way G.I. Joe is a cartoon. Are you serious? I could be wrong. It's not like I'm a huge G.I. Joe fan. There's no way.
Pretty sure it was.
It's a 1963 action figure. No. They made awesome, huge action figures.
Yes, I forgot. I was thinking about like the 80s toys, but no, you're right. They had the tall 12-inch like Mego style toys in the 60s and 70s and 80s probably. So,
if you're going to discuss a collectible category with me, we're making sure to get the terminology right here.
Okay. Sorry. That's fine. I'm agreeing with you. You're right. I forgot about the earlier toys. And then I actually didn't realize there was a comic before that as well. Anyways, G.I. Joe, we agree that it's a popular 80s franchise, though? The Real American Heroes?
It's a popular 60s franchise, sure. But yes, it is. Yes, the cartoon, sure, big part of the 80s. Yes. You got the two NES toys, the Atari 2600 game.
Yeah, the Commodore 64 game. It had a couple games on the NES as well. So it had a lot of stuff going on. It had multiple comics that had crossovers in the 80s. It was part of all of that. It was one of these properties, again, that they've revived recently and made movies about. And that's kind of like stuff I wanted to hit on when they did that kind of stuff. Anyways,
so here's the thing. When you're telling, so we're just kind of like blowing through games here, but if you're telling me buy the G.I. Joe games on, say, NES or Atari.
I have a specific one.
Oh, what's your specific one?
Cobra Strike for the Atari 2600.
Okay, I mean, that would be the one. Sure, I would agree with that. But we're trying to pick things that are emblematic of the 1980s, and I feel like the video games of G.I. Joe is maybe the media I associate with them least out of all the G.I. Joe media there is.
That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm telling you, if you wanted to collect the properties that were emblematic of the 80s and you wanted to buy it in a video game form, this is the one that you would go buy. Not that it is the thing that best represents that time period for it. So I don't think video games represent these things the best for a lot.
But I think some of them are better. I'm saying I think G.I. Joe is pretty mediocre in how I feel about it as a video game
like if you wanted to, if you're like, I really want a G.I. Joe item, we're talking to video game collectors, so I'm giving them games. If you really wanted a G.I. Joe item, I would be like, go buy a Snake Eyes or a Duke, and like go buy that figure from like 1984. Okay, that's like what you want to go buy.
Sure. Or yeah, I would look at that and be like, oh yeah, the 80s. That guy's one of those 80s people who can't let go of his childhood and spends too much money on little shitty action figures.
Yeah, go get yourself a Lady J, a Refrigerator Perry figure, Sergeant Slaughter,
a guy called Refrigerator
Serpentor. Perry.
Yeah, I love that.
I don't know if he actually had a toy. I think he did. Anyways, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, kind of beyond dispute. What is a dispute here, Tyler? Is this a cartoon or a toy? You want to fight on this one?
Ooh, I don't know enough about He-Man. I've only ever really known it as a cartoon because I didn't live through the toy era.
So this is part of the problem with this toy, is that they created the toy and then created the cartoon to be like an advertisement, and that led to a bunch of FCC regulations about what you could do in cartoons, so they couldn't just be 30-minute commercials, even though they all definitely were, or 22-minute commercials for kids. So there became a standard around cartoons when toys became so prominent in the 80s, because like action figures for kids, because of Star Wars, really became this like next level item, and they had to make laws around it, and He-Man was one of the prime offenders and one of the reasons that it happened. So that's a little fun fact for you. Anyway, so you could go either with those, and the one to buy is for the I kind of like the Intellivision box a little better, or the 2600 box, and it's He-Man Masters of the Universe, The Power of He-Man. It's cool. It comes with a comic. The reason I like the Intellivision one better is not because I think it's any better, but I like the Intellivision overlays that you get with the game. So you get like a little extra thing in the box, as well as getting the comic in there. It's a little mini comic that goes in there that used to also come with the He-Man figures. Pretty cool. The Atari 2600 one is more expensive. It's going to be like about a $200 game, when the Intellivision one's about $60.
Johnny, did anyone on planet Earth care about this game before the Wada boom? Because, oh my goodness, this game went from like $0, and there must have been like two people who were like buying up sealed games in 2020 who were into He-Man, who bid this up. And this wasn't a game that went crazy, but there were a few of these that went for like $1,000, $3,000 for the He-Man Intellivision game. Like literally a game everyone from the day it was released up until 2019 looked at and were like, yeah, I'm not going to buy that garbage.
I think I bought it in box with the comic for $11 in like 2017.
And yeah, it's not super expensive now. I think it's like, it's like maybe $60 to $100 depending on how nice and complete it is.
Again, everything is going to be condition dependent. It's like an average.
But this is a game that the franchise has really put in the work over the past 5 years on this one, even though it's not super expensive.
Yeah. And He-Man, it has carried on definitely as a toy. There's been new Netflix shows. And again, they keep trying to like launch a movie. It had a movie famously with Dolph Lundgren that people did not enjoy, because 80s movies based off properties were weird back in the day. Mario and He-Man prime offenders.
I don't know how my fellow millennials feel, Johnny, but I could tell you essentially nothing about He-Man. I associate He-Man almost exclusively with that Four Non-Blondes meme, where he's going, That is the only thing I know about He-Man. Like, I know about Tron, I know about War Games. I can't tell you fucking, it's like I have zero, it has no appeal to me. I have no connection with it. I've never talked to anyone who cared about He-Man who wasn't 10 years older than me.
Yeah, you're talking to the guy who loves He-Man, so
Yeah.
I love.
It is a franchise that does not go past your generation. No one cares. And you know what?
I mean,
It's
still
probably
carries on there. It's still sitting in Target right now. You can still go buy He-Man figures.
Yeah, so people who are 47 years old can go buy He-Man figures for their children. Yes, I understand.
Not collector figures. These are just regular toys for regular children.
For your kids, yeah, because you want to force your kids to have the same childhood that you had.
Mm-hmm. You know, someone bought JD some He-Man figures, and I was like, I don't think he cares about those. And he definitely didn't. You know what he did like, though? There was a She-Ra cartoon on Netflix that he really liked the opening song for. So when he was much smaller, he used to just enjoy watching that for the opening song. Anyways,
Inspector Johnny, Gadget, this is kind of related to what we're talking about. I feel like this whole idea of making your kid live the same childhood you did, and I understand this is something you are doing a little bit. Was this at all a thing when we were kids? Like my mom didn't try to get me to listen to like Madonna and Grateful Dead. I was just doing my own thing.
I think what happened there, Tyler, is like dads, they were like, you're going to play baseball, son, because that's the American pastime. I think that was like...
it definitely was a thing in just different ways. You're right.
Yeah. So but I don't think it was as prevalent. And I don't, like, again, and that's kind of like where the 80s is now. People talk about how they're going to introduce their children to Star Wars. How am I going to show this kid Lord of the Rings? And like, how am I going to, you start planning your parenting around these properties and how to best introduce your child to it so they're not overwhelmed and hate it. And then also like find some joy in it, and you sit there and you stress about, they're going to hate this thing I love. And I don't think that was really a thing before. You weren't like, oh man, I'm worried my boy's not going to like the Tigers. Like that wasn't a thing. You like your kid was going to like the Tigers because you bought him a hat and he went out in the sandlot and stick and balled it up all day.
People probably get stressed out like, oh my God, I'm going to show my kids Star Wars. But what if they think it's just another movie? It was just like tonight's movie. Because, like, obviously, like, you have Netflix now that people can watch a movie every night if they want. And what if he doesn't realize, like, oh, no, you have to really care about this one. This wasn't just another disposable movie. Oh, man. So people must force that shit onto their kids so much now because of that.
There are so many layers in Star Wars, too. Like, oh, my God, do you show them the prequels? And what order do you show it in? And, oh, my God, like, but I don't really like the prequels. And, like, oh, my God, no, the sequel trilogy. There is so much. And you know what's great about Star Wars? Is it's many generations now are having to deal with this. Boomers, Gen Xers, millennials, they're all having these thoughts. And Gen Alpha will be like, what the fuck? Who cares? So they're like, oh, I really liked that show, Skeleton Crew. I think that was my favorite Star Wars, and people are going to roll over and die. Anyways, not a great one, Tyler, but a prominent cartoon back in the 80s, I feel like, that had some games you could go buy. Inspector Gadget, obviously not like top of the list.
Inspector Gadget?
Yeah, do you know Inspector
Gadget?
Gadget?
Tron is on this list, and we're talking about Inspector Gadget?
Yeah.
There's like Tron. An R&B song that my wife listens to that has Inspector Gadget motifs or like something to it. So maybe you're right. Maybe it lives on.
Anyways,
I loved Inspector Gadget as a kid. I would watch every episode.
Dr. Claw, man, so cool.
I'll get you, Gadget, next time.
So loved it. Love that.
Impression. Wow, Johnny's voices. Johnny's breaking out the secret good voices here. Wow.
So, thank you. Anyways, you can get that on there's an Inspector Gadget game that came out pretty early actually for the Commodore or the Amiga, 1983, and it's like $20 if you care about that.
Is that the only Inspector Gadget game?
No, there's some on the Game Boy Color, and there's a couple.
Game Boy Color, man.
I know. I said it to hurt you.
Anyway, I would buy an Inspector Gadget game. I don't think I have an Inspector Gadget game. And you're making me want
64.
One. Oh, wait, no, there's one on Super Nintendo. So I do have one.
Yes. Yeah,
okay. Oh my God, there's a new one on Switch?
I'm telling you, these properties persist. It's crazy.
What is going on? Inspector Gadget?
Yes, That's like, I'm going to bring stuff up and you're going to be like, how? And it's not like I didn't check to see if these still had games being made, which is the crazy thing about these. Like everything I'm going to bring up still is going. There's a few that are like, have lost a little bit, and I'll get to those and tell you how I feel about them. Ghostbusters. You ever heard of Ghostbusters, Tyler?
I've heard of Ghostbusters.
Okay, so here's the thing with Ghostbusters. This is, I don't know why this says cartoon. This is definitely a movie, so this is got miscategorized. So I'm going to resort this list. I'm not actually going to talk to you about Ghostbusters right now. I'm going to move right on to Transformers. You heard of Transformers, Tyler?
Yeah, the Michael Bay franchise. I thought that was more the 2000s. Yeah,
I mean, your favorite one is probably part 2. That's my favorite one for sure. I definitely walked out of that movie. Anyways, there is actually a new Transformers film, Transformers 1, that's animated, and that was pretty good. My son really enjoyed that. It's been into Transformers a little bit since. I did not hoist this upon him. He asked me to watch it, just so we all know where we stand here, even though I do like Transformers. I didn't have a lot of Transformers as a kid. You can get one for the Famicom. There's a Famicom one and there's a Commodore one. So the Commodore one is the first one, and it's just called Transformers. You can get it for like between $20 to $100, depending on the condition of the box. Mystery of the Convoy for the Famicom, that came out in 1986, and that's around $70. So it's weird because the 80s were so Transformers, and they didn't get a lot of games in the 80s. But if you look in like the aughts during the Michael Bay times, so many Transformers games, so many came out, and so many are still coming out. But 80s were pretty light for Transformers games, really.
I can't think of a single Transformer game that people hold in high regard.
No. And which is weird. Like you would think something so prominent from the 80s, like I don't know if the Famicom one is good. I've never played it, but like had it made it here, then maybe people would have more video game nostalgia for it. But
it's kind of infamously, it's one of these games that's like, quote unquote, one of the worst games ever made because it's very hard and a shitty Famicom game. I've never played it, so I don't know if it holds up to that. It looks really bad, but people will call anything that is too hard the worst game ever made. It looks really bad, though.
Yeah, not super into it. Anyways, going to move on to the real Ghostbusters, which is the one that is a cartoon. I mentioned based off of the Ghostbusters franchise, but a lot of kids saw the real Ghostbusters before they saw the Ghostbusters movies, because that was for kids and the Ghostbusters movies were a little adult. And this came out in 1987. And Michael J. Straczynski wrote them. So if you're a sci-fi nerd or a Spider-Man nerd, you might know that name. He wrote some episodes of that. Pretty cool. It was a well-written, interesting show. Featured a lot of cool supernatural monsters in it, ghosts. And you can get that on the ZX Spectrum. There's a $25 one. There's also a Game Boy Color one that comes out later, or a Game Boy one that comes out in the 90s. But if you were interested in a real Ghostbusters game that came out in the 80s, that ZX Spectrum is where you want to look.
But that's the real Ghostbusters?
Yes, the real Ghostbusters.
Again, real Ghostbusters, I basically have no idea what it is. I know it's a cartoon. I know there's a reason it's called the real Ghostbusters, because there was like a fake Ghostbusters before it.
Well, there was a Ghostbusters Hanna-Barbera show that also existed that's a whole thing. You can read
I know. I love the boldness of them calling it the real Ghostbusters, but beyond that, it's basically He-Man to me. I just have no connection to the real Ghostbusters.
It's fair. Again, this was, if you weren't a kid of the right age to be watching this, it probably didn't matter to you. I didn't put a Conan on this. Whoops. Thundercats. You heard of Thundercats, Tyler? Based more cartoons.
No, I lived in the 90s. We had SWAT cats, and they were fucking awesome, Johnny.
Well, this is basically He-Man, but cats. The Lost Eye of Thundera. You can get this on the Amstrad, the ZX Spectrum, the Commodore 64. It's a European exclusive game, and it's $20. But if you love the Thundercats and you're like, where are my Thundercat games? Not a lot came out, even with the reboot. So this is like on the lower tier. It's like Silverhawks, Thundercats are like all a step below He-Man. They were very popular, but they didn't quite reach that threshold as He-Man.
Again, these do nothing
you
for
don't
me.
know anything.
Although Silverhawks, there was a reproduction of Silverhawks that actually got shut down by whoever owns the rights to Silverhawks. That's a pretty interesting video game collecting story.
Yep. But I didn't put it on here because that I feel like is a rung lower than Thundercats. So as far as overall popularity and cultural impact, so it didn't make it on. This one I think we can both agree on. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So this franchise took kind of everything by storm. Movies, cartoons based off of the comic, right? One of our co-hosts famously had tattoos of many of the TMNTs on him and was a huge collector of it. Anyways, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are here in the zeitgeist to stay, and you can get the copy. I think that would be the one you would buy. It is on the NES, famously hard. Again, you could put this in the cartoon or the toy category. Also very famous in video games, though, for about $65 for a complete box one. And I would say buy the original, even though you might like other Turtles games better from the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the original NES game and Turtles in Time are the ones that I would buy, Johnny.
Yeah, I think Turtles in Time, though, is the 90s.
Yeah, all right, well, we got to stick strictly to the 80s. Yeah,
yes.
The NES game is absolutely it then. Some people don't like that game. That game is good, and I don't really know what you're talking about.
I played the shit out of it, but it was hard. And it wasn't like exactly clear, and the game just shifted. You went from overworld map to underworld, and like it was, if you were a kid starting
Johnny,
out,
you probably you were what, 8 years old? You had the time to fucking figure it out. People just want to sit through, like, now it's 2024 or 2025. People want to sit down. They're like, I've got 10 hours. I want to play through a video game, but they don't want to have to work for it. And sometimes you just had to work a little bit for it. You just had to figure some stuff out. Little bit of trial and error. It's a game. It's not a movie. It's not a book. You got to work for it. And it's a good game.
I'm Star Wars. There's a lot of Star Wars you can pick. I'm specifically.
Whoa, hold on, Johnny.
Okay.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is one of the 12 most speculated on franchises.
Obviously.
It is, in fact,
too much
number one if we're not counting individual games.
Okay.
Like, most of the games have gone, most of the 80s and early 90s games have gone for over $20,000. But what actually came out in the 80s on NES? Did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 come out in the 80s?
I don't know. I think so.
Well, anyway, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and NES sold for $29,000 twice in 2020. This is one of those sales, because Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a common video game. This is one of those sales in 2020, like right when this whole thing was getting started with grading games. I think I looked at them like, what on earth is happening right now? Why is there a $29,000 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game? And that happened twice. And then in 2021, it went up to $48,000. And 2022, we had $22,000 to $41,000. And then just last year, 2024, you can get a 9.8 A++ perfect condition for $25,000. Objectively ridiculous. But basically, if you bought pop culture games from 2020 through 2024, you probably lost your shirt. All of these games got absolutely annihilated. I won't go through all of them because I guess these are mostly 90s games, Johnny. Hyperstone Heist, though, I know it's a Genesis game. That's one I like bringing up because I think it's one of the worst video game sales ever. Someone bought a non-perfect one in 2021 for $66,000. The very next year, one sold for $13,000. Just lost a cool $50,000 in 1 year. It kind of looks like that across the board for those Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games. Very strange market. Basically went from nothing to full speed in a year. It's the one, Johnny. People love the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I would not, if I'm speculating tens of thousands of dollars on cool Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle shit, like, all right, maybe I understand the first NES game because it's got the cool art. It's the iconic game. It's out of all the games people remember, it's going to be Turtles in Time and that NES game, I think. And I really think that most of the other games don't really matter. And they're still selling for some of them like $20,000. But if I had that kind of money, I'm going to buy Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1, the comic book. That is so clearly the thing. It's rare. It's important. It's historic. There's not many. What is this? It's got a print run of 3,000 or something for the first print? Am I remembering that right? Maybe that's wrong. But
the Turtles is such a weird franchise because it has things that people clearly identify with because it was such a big property. Like, you can be a comic book person for Turtles. You can be a toy person. You can be a video game person. You could be the movie person. And they're all different things.
You know what? Let me give you
just so you know, Turtles 2, the arcade game, 1989 in the arcade, 1990 ported to the NES.
Johnny, what's the secret game? What's the Usagi Yojimbo game for like the Commodore?
Oh. Isn't it just called Yojimbo?
It's called Samurai Warrior for the Commodore 64, and I believe there's another game called Samurai Warrior that's actually about samurai. So not that. It has Miyamoto Usagi on the box art. But if you are like a weird, deep Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan and you want something cool that other people don't have, but you don't want to spend $50,000 on a copy of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 just because it has a little bit of shrink wrap around it, go get Samurai Warrior for the Commodore 64.
That's an excellent pick.
Usagi Yojimbo game.
Yeah.
Because you like fighting animals, you weirdo. You're not a weirdo. And Donatello's the best turtle. All right. That's all I got to say about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff.
Just a call out. I feel like I should have been doing it earlier, but if one of these games has a little people pack, I'm going to tell you, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles has 2, and so does Transformers and He-Man. They both have 2. So we've hit on the little people here. 3 of these franchises.
Great. Keep me updated on these. Keep me updated on the price history of these. Oh, what's that? $25 from Target? Okay, great.
Yeah. So Star Wars, Tyler, you've heard of it. We talked about it. I'm specifically calling out The Empire Strikes Back. Because I feel like, and you can tell me if you disagree, I feel like that is the game in the arcade that was most identified. And when I went through arcades, sometimes the Death Star game was there until the 90s when like the trilogy one was around. I felt like I saw Empire Strikes Back around the most. Like that was the game. Did you see that in arcades when you were, because you were a little older than me? I mean, younger than me.
I only know about the games in a historical sense, and from like a collector point of view and historical point of view, everyone cares about Star Wars way more than The Empire Strikes Back. Like Star Wars is one of the most iconic, like collector-y arcade games. But the original,
because you got like the TIE fighters, you got the little square stick, and it's got the sit-in cabinet.
Yeah, but you're not going to count it because that's 70s.
Yes,
I'm sorry. The arcade game's 80s, though.
Yeah, no, I would count the arcade game as that, but I'm also not telling people to go buy like a $8,000 arcade cabinet. Even though they did do a remake of what's that brand of arcade cabinets we really hate? 1-Up?
I Am 8-Bit. Oh no, arcade 1-Up. Yeah, you're arcade.
Right. Yeah, they made one even with the bench, so you could get the whole thing, a mini version of it. You want to put that in your house.
I mean, the cool part of it is that they're vector arcade games, so I don't want to play it on like a little $50 Chinese LCD screen. I could do that sitting in my chair at my computer already.
No, I think this is like one of their machines. Like you sit on this whole thing.
I know, but it's not going to have a vector monitor.
I don't know that. Do you know that?
I know
because I wouldn't want to play one.
As
of those.
someone who has touched the cheap Chinese arcade 1-Up controls that they put in their cabinets, yes, I know that they did not develop a CRT vector monitor to ship with their home Star Wars game.
you don't know that. It seems reasonable to think that these $500 machines definitely made like a $500 monitor and put it in there.
All right.
Anyways, I would tell you to buy the Atari 2600 version of The Empire Strikes Back. It's like $30 or $40, but all the Star Wars games are kind of in that price range. So pick the Star Wars game you like if you want to collect the 80s and get it. There's all like the wrong one to buy, I think, is the NES ones. I think they actually came out in the 90s as well, but those aren't the right versions. Like you definitely should buy the Atari ones. These are the Star Wars games that, speak to the 80s the most.
What's the first Star Wars video game? It didn't come out in the 70s. So what's the first one? I would just say that is probably the best one to get. I mean, it's Star Wars Arcade, right?
Star Wars. Yeah.
So we can count that.
Sure. Like, yeah, yes, go get the $8,000 arcade.
Or
game,
no,
not,
wait, no, you're
saying,
right. Is it Empire Strikes Back? There's no way. It's Empire Strikes Back on Atari 2600.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is that the first one? Did that come out before the port of the arcade game?
Yeah, because it came out before the arcade game came out. The Atari version came out in 1982, and Star Wars Arcade came out in 1983.
Oh, weird. I did not know that.
So, yeah, go get Empire Strikes Back on Atari 2600. There's probably people speculating on it. You could probably go get it's probably like super common sealed, and people have pushed it up to like $1,200 just because. That is literally exactly what happened. The last one sold for $1,000.
Oh my god!
In 9.88++, though, so it was a perfect.
This one got I don't know what happened here, but that got miscategorized. That's obviously under the movie category, but you could put it. It's definitely movie, but it's in every piece of media that has pretty much ever been media. All right, Tyler, we're moving on out of cartoons and that one rogue spinoff into a movie, and we're going to talk about some celebrity stuff, which is mainly athlete related.
Can I actually bring up? I want to bring up a point, Johnny. I'm still keeping track of these top 12 franchises that have had the most crazy speculative purchases. Star Wars not on that list.
That's what I think, because there haven't been a lot of great Star Wars games, but I would have expected more speculation on the Atari stuff.
Okay, let me bring something up that it was probably we're not going to bring up. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is on the list.
Oh,
because I looked at all the sales over $10,000 in 2021, and I realized everything in 2021 is basically bananas. Someone bought Who Framed Roger Rabbit on the NES for $16,000.
That is weird.
Suck it, Star Wars.
Okay,
we appreciate real art here. The combination of animation and live action like you've never seen before. Without Who Framed Roger Rabbit, we wouldn't have the LeBron James Space Jam movie.
Okay. I mean, is that something like, are you asking me if we could take it back then, or what are you asking me?
I'm not asking you anything, Johnny. Just go on. I just wanted to bring up Star Wars isn't on my list.
Fair enough. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, both in there for celebrity and also being a quintessential game of the 80s. You've heard of Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, came out in 1987. Punch-Out is a franchise before Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, but most people didn't really realize that, because Mike Tyson's Punch-Out was a whole thing, and Mike Tyson was just the phenomenon of the 80s. In an era dominated by famous athletes, he was, in the top 5. And, even though this whole Logan Paul thing, like, again, his famous was such that even at 60, they had him fighting a YouTuber, and millions of dollars were still paid to go watch this, which is ridiculous, which is the impact that Tyson had. Unless you were someone who fought Tyson, then the impact that he had was probably him knocking you the F out.
Hey, Johnny, I've got a good point to bring up. What do you give a shit about boxing? You don't care about boxing. No one listening to this cares about boxing. You know who Mike Tyson is. I
actually do like boxing.
Okay.
I watch a fair bit of boxing. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Shut up, Johnny.
Yeah. I'm sorry I like boxing. I like sports. You know this. I know it upsets you. And again, boxing, a little bit bigger in the 80s, 90s. We started to transition into MMA and stuff, and then that just became the thing. Anyways, there's not a lot to say about Mike Tyson's Punch-Out that hasn't already been said. If you want a copy, you can go get one for like $200. Which bullets should they get? Orange or white, Tyler?
What bullets? It's boxing. It's not shooting.
The bullets on the box, Tyler, of Mike Tyson's Punch-Out.
So the bullets. So there are 3 little like notes. They're bullet points I the first time I heard white bullets in my life, I didn't understand what the bullets were. But yes, on the front of the box, there's those 3 little notes that are under Punch Out. The bullets are white on the first print, but it is not a 5-screw cartridge, like you might expect given the era. There are 5-screw Mike Tyson cartridges, but they are extremely rare, and there's some weird thing. So you can tell yourself you got a first print even if you don't have the 5-screw cartridge.
And make sure it's got the letter in it, because if you don't have the letter in it, is not complete. Go get a letter. And make sure it's a red border letter, because if it's blue, it's Canadian. Tyler,
I'm
Jordan
thinking
versus
here.
Bird.
I'm thinking.
What?
Sometimes I'm really picky on making people get the first print on a game I think is really significant.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first print is expensive enough, and I think I'm cool with you just getting a circle seal. I'm gonna call.
Okay.
It. I think you should get the white bullet. If you're like an NES guy, like maybe spend the extra however much it costs. But you know what? Just don't get the oval seal. The oval seal, no one wants an oval seal. Come on, get out of here, guys. You want that?
So as with all these NES games that are in like the top tier, condition, first prints, all that starts to matter. The price will fluctuate. Just a generic version is like $200-ish. Okay. So,
and Johnny, I don't like we get into the weeds sometimes and don't explain ourselves. We're talking about the Nintendo seal of quality on the bottom right of the box. On the earlier print, it is a black circle, and on later print games, starting in, I don't know, someone will know, like 1991, they switched it to a white oval seal. And we identify it based on the shape, not the color, because they come in different colors. So it's circle seal for the early ones, oval seal for the later ones, Johnny.
Yep. I assume anyone listening to us would know that, but it's a good call.
We gotta, you know what? Every time I listen to another collectibles show or something, they always like reiterate the basics, and it's someone's first episode, so we gotta just
that's true. I'm not even saying you're wrong. Yeah.
Can I?
So,
are you moving
you should
on?
do this one. Yeah. Moving on to Jordan versus Bird, and that's all you, buddy.
Johnny, number 1 on the 80s games and franchises with the biggest $10,000 plus sales since the 2021 bubble is Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!, which I believe, I think there were multiple copies that sold for $300,000. There's certainly multiple copies that have sold for over $200,000. But the highest one that I found was $312,000 on Heritage Auctions for a 9.8 A++ oval seal. $300,000. This was obviously in 2021. This wasn't even the peak. It was like October. It was like the end of like the absolute crazy peak. This was probably the last gasp of like the absolute peak of the market. Someone was just out of their mind. And because it was a late print, like they were probably arguing to someone in like social media, they're probably arguing with themselves, like, it doesn't matter that it's a late print. It's in perfect condition. Well, since then, oval seals have sold for like less than $10,000. Like, they are not rare compared to I don't even know how rare Mike Tyson is in general, but
not very. It's a very popular game.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, it's one of the worst video game purchases of all time, I would say. And someone will be like, "Oh, but it's in perfect condition, and it's Mike Tyson's Punch-Out!" I bet that guy wishes he could take that sale back. All right.
And the guy who sold it, rubbing his hands together and running for the bank, or reinvested it and got hosed later. We don't know. This is the perfect thing, because that was October 2021. The market peaked in the summer. There was a signature auction in July, I think, and that was like the absolute peak. So by the time this guy got his $300,000, he couldn't have put it into like the absolute dumbest thing possible. So he probably lost money if he reinvested it into more stupid pop culture video games, but he wouldn't have done as bad as if he sold it in like 2020 and then reinvested it. Nice. Well, maybe
there's
he got
always
lucky.
a silver lining.
Maybe he dodged a bullet. Tyler?
Good one. You got him.
Yeah, thanks. All right. It was probably an orange bullet that he dodged, because he got an oval seal. Jordan versus Bird. Tyler, you put this on the list because we wanted to talk about Michael Jordan. Maybe you've heard
Johnny,
of him.
no, why? Who cares about Michael Jordan? He was a big guy in the 90s,
Everybody.
I think. Who cares in the 80s? What?
If you want to incite people on Facebook, just say Michael Jordan isn't the GOAT, LeBron James is, and then watch people fight. And then it's just engagement baiting, and they'll just put these posts, and like then people can't help themselves but fight about it. So these threads will go on for thousands of comments, and it will literally, someone will post this, like one of these dumb sites will post this 10 times a day, and it's like someone who controls all the same accounts, and then it's like LeBron fans, and then like Jordan fans, and then like they'll just post some like cherry pick stats, and then people will just sit there and fight about it. It's great. If you want to know how bad people are at the internet, go look at them. Go look at a Jordan versus LeBron GOAT basketball. Even if you're like, oh well, what about Kareem? I don't care which guy you are. That thread is for you, and you will see how you are being manipulated on the internet if you take off your fan glasses for a minute and sit back and look at these threads as they have occurred and how long they've been around and how often new ones come up. Engagement baiting, guys. Don't get suckered.
All right, so Michael Jordan is the second best basketball player of all time, is an icon of the 1990s, Johnny. He won 6 NBA championships in the 90s. Why are we talking about him?
Don't you dare. Don't you dare. Because I brought that up, that he won his championships in the 90s, even though he was in the 80s. And I think the reason we can talk about him, one, he was obviously very popular in the 80s as well. But something very collectible happened in the 80s, Tyler, that involves Michael Jordan. Do you know what that is?
I'm going to have two. Can I have two guesses?
You can.
Okay, one, his rookie card, his multiple rookie cards came out, which have sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Very, very collectible. But I'm not going to say that because that didn't launch an industry.
He changed the entire concept of collecting shoes.
He sure did. He created sneakerheads with Jordans. So there's a whole documentary about it if you want to find out why he got fined and how Nike was paying the fines, and, you know, that Jordan thought they were ugly, his red and black Jordans. Like there's a whole saga. Okay. There's a whole movie you can watch about it. You go invest time into reading about it, but I would say that is a reason enough to put him there. But also, again, I think he's more of a cultural icon for the 90s, but like it crosses over. So it's hard just to be like, oh, the 90s because he won his championships. But that was probably the peak of his popularity.
Yeah, and for anyone curious, Johnny, the Air Jordans came out in 1984, which was like his rookie year or like a year after his rookie year.
Yeah. So they were, Nike was, there was a whole thing about how they got him to sign the shoe deal.
So, Johnny, the video game is Jordan vs. Bird, which came out on NES, Commodore. I didn't write everything down. I think it came out on like DOS and maybe like one other computer.
There's a lot of different.
This is the debate that everyone's having these days. Who's better, Michael Jordan or Larry Bird? And, you know, you've got like that one uncle who he won't stop talking about Larry Bird. He really thinks that Bird was the GOAT.
Larry Legend is a hell of a player. As a diehard Lakers fan, you can't really disrespect Bird.
No, it's crazy. I just put into eBay Jordan versus Bird, know anything, and the first 3. All right, so 3 out of the first 5 results have shrink wrap on them. 2 of them are sealed computer games, and one of them is an NES game with the shrink wrap on it. I would say this game is gettable, and it's not the first Michael Jordan. Is it the first Michael Jordan game? It's the first Michael Jordan game, Johnny. Jordan versus Bird on the NES, which is the later version. It came out on computers first and was ported to the NES. It's a terrible basketball game. I think every basketball game on NES might be terrible. 2022, 2 copies sold for $14,000 and $25,000. And they didn't even have A+ seals. When I was going through all these ratings, I filtered out anything that didn't have at least an A+ seal as just like that doesn't count as like a mint game that I'm going to really go into. since 2022, better copies than those have sold in like the $2,000 to $3,000 range. So in 2 years, they lost around $20,000 of value. Because it's Jordan versus Bird on the NES. What was anybody thinking? The computer versions, the original versions of the game, they're literally on eBay right now for like a couple $100 in good condition, and no one's buying them. Because who cares? But if you care about Jordan and you want the real thing and you're speculating on the coolest, sealedest video games, go get the computer versions of Jordan vs. Bird instead of spending $25,000 on the fucking NES port. I feel like I've already had this conversation with the podcast. There's like multiple sealed copies of the computer version.
That's true.
Ugh.
You've yelled at people about this before. Definitely don't buy the Genesis version.
There's a Genesis version? Don't buy the Genesis version. Oh, yeah. I see. Those Genesis EA Sports games with those white and blue boxes, my brain just does such a good job of filtering them out. Because literally, I have now decades of experience of just like sight peering over Genesis lots looking for like the good stuff. And like as soon as you see the EA Sports games, my eye just like immediately glosses over it because I know it's an EA Sports game.
Yep. Slides right over it like it doesn't exist.
Yep.
As it should. Tyler, there's another famous athlete, and yes, I guess I could talk about Magic Johnson. He's got some games. I'm gonna bring him up. Yes, icon, but we don't need that many basketball players on this list, so forgive me. Wayne Gretzky, though. You ever heard of Wayne Gretzky? You have, because we've talked about him on the podcast before.
A man of the 80s.
He is a man of the 80s. He is known as the Great One. Okay, so just the best hockey player to ever do it, and people who are now into hockey might be debating that. I don't know. But back in my day, and as a Los Angeles Kings fan, even though we came from the Edmonton Oilers to us, there was Gretzky brought hockey into California, and people fell in love with it. It was a whole big thing. And again, his nickname is the Great One. If you get a nickname like the Great One, that's crazy, because you can't just call yourself the Great One. Other people have to be like, oh, the Great One? Like, that's a crazy nickname to get. Like, I don't know how you feel about nicknames, but if everyone's willing just to call you the Great One, that's some esteem. I don't know how you like walk around and like be humble when people just call you the Great One. Like, and not specific to your sport. It's like, no, it's not hockey. It's the Great One. It's just the Great One. Anyways, there is some games you can buy. You can get the 1988 Amiga version, the first version. You can get all kinds of different NES versions, but go get that Amiga version from 1988 with the Edmonton Oilers jersey and collect yourself some Wayne Gretzky, because he is a man of the 80s.
Wayne Gretzky is our people. Wayne Gretzky famously owned a T206 Honus Wagner card, the quote-unquote rarest, not the rarest because it's not, but the rarest and most valuable baseball card, worth millions of dollars. And it's called like the Gretzky T206 Honus Wagner because he's the one who owned it. So if he was willing to blow his money on that, imagine all the cool stuff he probably owns now. He's sold that now. So imagine all the cool stuff he has. He's just like us, probably.
Yeah, I mean, he owns like part of a hockey team, or he used to. So I think he owns part of the Arizona, whatever they are. I can't remember.
See, is this like, man, when you get like too rich, like, can you even appreciate material objects anymore? Like, once you get that rich, it's like, oh yeah, I own a sports team. Oh, I bought Twitter. Like, that's not fun. Like, the physical object is part of the fun of collecting. You can't just, it's just owning stocks at some point otherwise. It's just like influencing political power. It's like a whole different world.
It's just owning money and power. That's just what it becomes.
If
you just reach past that.
People or businesses, that's not collecting. Get out of here with that. Or like if you're like, I don't know, Alexander the Great, the other great one, collecting territory. You're not a collector. You got the same brain, but you're not using it correctly. You need to be acquiring physical nuts to hoard for winter.
Your squirrel brain is doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Anyways, Tyler, you put this one on the list, and I don't disagree with the sentiment, though I have a problem with the time frame. Michael Jackson's Moonwalker.
Oh, I just wanted to say buy Wayne Gretzky hockey the Bethesda Softworks game from, I think, 1988. We didn't put it on the list, I guess.
1988. Yes, 1988.
Yeah, that is... It's the first Wayne Gretzky game. Hey, that's something. And it's the game that like catapulted Bethesda into popularity. They had a football game called Gridiron that I don't think anyone cares about. But Wayne Gretzky Hockey was a breakout computer game hit. Sold like hundreds of thousands of copies. You've never heard about it or played it because some games just completely fade into the historical dustbin. But it had 2 sequels on computers, and then it had a sequel on N64 and another sequel on N64. So very successful franchise of a game no one cares about, but Wayne Gretzky.
Yep. Go get it.
Controversial next pick, Johnny, Michael Jackson Moonwalker, which was a movie, an album. It's Michael Jackson's Moonwalker.
Yeah.
Wikipedia calls it an experimental anthology musical film. All right.
Mm-hmm.
That came out in 1988. Johnny, the video game, the arcade game, Michael Jackson Moonwalker, came out in 1990, along with the Genesis home port.
Oh, yeah. When you said Genesis, I knew we hit in the 90s. How are you putting a Genesis game on it?
Genesis came out in 1989. We could put a Genesis. It could technically be on here.
Okay.
Johnny,
Okay.
What is more 1980s than Michael Jackson?
Nothing.
What is
nothing.
more celebrity than Michael Jackson? He's the biggest person who has ever lived.
I don't disagree with you. It goes against the conceit of the episode, but it feels gross to leave him out because it was so important. Again, when you get a nickname like the King of Pop, it's like okay, yeah, it's Michael Jackson. Yes, obviously he needs to be mentioned. If we can.
He's the king of pop, but Elvis Presley just got the king. He didn't need no qualifiers.
No, that's true. So,
Johnny, Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, a game where you run around parking lots, opening up car trunks and rescuing children.
Oh,
if you describe Michael Jackson Moonwalker to a person who has not played Michael Jackson Moonwalker, they literally won't believe you the first time you describe what you do in that game.
So Michael Jackson runs around with children?
That is actually the game, yes.
Oh, somehow not shocking at all.
It's all right. I'm into Michael Jackson Moonwalker. Johnny, should you buy this game?
I mean, if you want to collect some Michael Jackson stuff, look, this goes into the same thing that we talked about with other stuff. If you want to collect Michael Jackson stuff, the Genesis game ain't it. Go buy a Thriller album or something. So that's like the thing to go get, or go get a jacket or one single glove. But if you want it in a video game form, then yes, go buy Moonwalker for about $85 on the Genesis.
So, the interesting thing with Michael Jackson Moonwalker, there is an early version of the game ROM itself that has Thriller. So you could do like a special attack in the game, and it plays a little like Michael Jackson theme on the Genesis sound trip. And was it in the graveyard level? The earliest versions of the game played Thriller. And for some stupid reason, on the later versions of the game, it doesn't play Thriller. And you can open up your actual cartridge to check the chip somehow and see if you have the right chip. But if you want to guarantee that you have it, there's an error cartridge where they printed the label upside down. And are all of those error cartridges early prints?
I have no idea.
I think they are. So it comes with a black and white copy of the manual rather than a regular manual, and the cartridge label is upside down. This isn't like a one-off error. It's not like you'll never find these. They are rare, but they're not like impossible. I have seen them on eBay and pointed them out to people before. So if you want the coolest version of Moonwalker because you're just the biggest MJ fan, that's the one to get, I think.
I would agree.
And hopefully, instead of spending, you could probably, hopefully you're spending $100 on that and you're not spending whatever the inflated price. I'm sure there's one on eBay that someone's asking like, $1,000 for, but that's one of the things hopefully you can find in the save search.
Yep. And it's also available on the Master System if you want to really get it wrong.
That is just the wrongest. Just don't do that. You could just not. I mean, that's more 80s, but also you could just not do that.
Or you could get the DOS version of the game.
Really? There's a DOS version?
Yeah.
All right, now I'm looking that up.
By US Gold. Comes with
There's
a poster.
one on eBay. Oh, did this not come out in America? Is that why I don't know about it?
Probably.
There's one in Austria right now for a cool $307.
Yeah, you can also get it on the Commodore 64 as a cassette.
There's another one in Austria that someone bought it now for $256.
Yeah.
Wow.
You can get it on the Amiga as well as there's a lot of different versions of this game all over the world. You can find yourself a Michael Jackson game if you want it.
This is just one of those things, like, who is the collector who's spending $250 on Michael Jackson Moonwalker on IBM PC? Like, we don't interact with that person because they must be in like a big box PC group or something. But even when I was in like the big box PC Facebook group or Vogons, which is like an old vintage PC forum, I'm not seeing people posting their expensive European big box obscure PC games. Like, they must be in like a little European bubble. And there's this whole group of weird collectors that have like cool stuff and they're not telling us about it.
Yeah. Like there's a boxed version from US Gold, like one of the, the little small square cardboard boxes that hold cassettes. There's one of those available too from US Gold. And also Vogons, a race from Hitchhiker's Guide to a Galaxy, famous for their poetry and blowing up Earth. There you go.
That's it.
All right. Anyways, go get yourself some Michael Jackson. So this one I don't feel good about, but you tell me. I wanted to add a couple of comic games in here. I took X-Men off the list. Okay, and I'll tell people why. Because, yes, popular in the 80s, but I really feel like it hit more people and especially more children's nostalgia in the 90s, especially with the onset of the animated series in 1992. And when we had a recent revival on Disney Plus, it was based off the 1992 animation, even though there's still been cartoons or comics going on and multiple cartoons for the X-Men for a long time. But really feel like animated series is what brought it. And yeah, you're going to be like, oh, Dark Phoenix Saga 19. It's like, okay. But X-Men #1, Chris Claremont, again, it's a 1990s thing. Yes, all the 80s stuff is important. All this stuff is X-Men existed before the 80s, but I think the popularity came out in the 90s. Fight me on that if you want. Spider-Man, how do you feel about Spider-Man in the 80s? Because I don't really feel like yes, it has the Atari game, but I don't feel like, again, I feel like that's comes more later. And again, same argument. Animated series, there's a lot of famous stuff going on with Spider-Man in the 80s, but I feel like it comes more later, 90s. Yes or no?
No, you're right. I mean, you can see that in the video games, like the Genesis game, and there's like multiple video games on the same platforms for Spider-Man in the 90s and the cartoon and all that. I don't know. You could argue that like, oh, but all these key comics of the 80s, but like, every comic has keys going from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. So yeah, I don't think Spider-Man is.
When I
think Spider-Man, I don't immediately think 80s, I will say. That's not the decade I would associate with Spider-Man the most.
So, same. And again, if you do, that's great. There's a game for you. You can get it on the Atari 2600. That's your guy. $40. Go find it. Superman the game. And people say, oh, well, what about Superman animated series? Not all that. The Superman movies are what really does it for me. And again, I put this under comic, but really I feel like the movies is what gives it its 80s cred because there was so many, like it was so important in the 80s for the movies. Christopher Reeve. Do you feel differently about Superman than you do Spider-Man?
No, I think the movies do a lot for Superman because there are like multiple movies and like Superman 2 is the big one, right? Does Superman 2 do better than Superman 1?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I would say yes to that.
I could go check it real quick. 216,000 box office versus.
Well, I mean, that's hard. And the original Superman movie came out in 1978. So.
Yeah. All right. So technically, Superman did do better than Superman 2, but Superman 2 was still incredibly successful.
Yes. One I watched more. Also, the VHSs of it came out in the 80s, and like that was so you were more watching it then. So you're like, oh, well, which game? Well, you can't pick the Atari 2600 game because that was the 70s. So the Commodore 64 one, it's Superman the Game, or the ZX Spectrum, or the Atari 8-bit. Kind of a rough pick, but the game does feature Dark Side. So if you want that, there's Superman on the NES, I want to say, came out in the 90s as well. So,
all right, this is falling into the
90s.
category of like, all right, if we're picking things that are iconic of the 80s, okay, there's just nothing Superman for us here then. Got it.
Yeah.
Great, I can get the Superman Commodore 64 game. So the one thing the Superman Commodore 64 game has fun going for it is you could say, hey guys, it's Superman 64. And you can make that joke. That's the only thing it's really got going for it.
Yeah. I was wrong. Superman on the NES. You can go buy that one. Came out in 1988 in America and 87. Or 87 in America and 88 in Japan. So there you go. Iconic U.S. first print. Just a couple of U.S. first prints on this list, by the way. Yeah. Also, got a Little People set, just so you know.
Great.
Throwing it out there.
Thanks for that info.
Okay. Anyways, that was comic. Again, we had crossover with Batman and everything. And I did check Batman NES, 1989, Tyler, December. Just barely squeaked it in there, but we got there. It's an 80s game.
Barely squeaks into the above 10K club in terms of speculation with 2022 sale of Batman for $16,000 and a 2021 sale of Return of the Joker for $12,000. I don't think those are worth nearly as much anymore.
So, Todd, I'm going to run through this part of the list kind of quick because I don't need, like, we talk about video games specifically, these games quite a lot. Iconic games of the 80s that kind of defined 80s video gameness. And again, we could literally name like 10 games a year and go on and like, so forgive me for like really trying to cherry pick some of the highlights. I will give you some reasoning for it.
Let me just, before you
even
go into it, I think if I'm picking the 80s as a decade, like almost a self-contained decade where it isn't just like, you know, a franchise like Zelda that expanded forever. If I'm picking two, it's going to be Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, I think. I know Donkey Kong, I mean, both of those are kind of their own thing that expanded onwards, but those are really two huge arcade games that I firmly associate with the 80s. Because we could literally, like you said, video games are our thing. 80s video games kind of specifically are our thing. We could go on forever with iconic 80s video games.
Yeah. So again, I'm going to run through these fast. I feel like a lot of these represent like Donkey Kong and Pac-Man pulling that arcade stuff. So this stuff is like more for the arcade stuff. There are versions you can buy. You know which versions to go buy. Go buy the Atari ports or whatever. The best versions are the arcade ones for these games specifically. So Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, Frogger, Galaga, not because I think it stands the test of time all that well or anything, but it was just in every arcade I ever went into. And it's like always around. And like there's even a Hallmark ornament for it.
People think Galaga's their favorite arcade game, but it's not.
Yeah, and they're wrong.
Arcade games.
Yeah. Yes, Galaga, I don't understand. I don't even like Galaga. I don't understand why people love it, but
because you could play it for 10 minutes on a quarter because it ramps up in difficulty so slowly. So people think they're good at it, but it's just boring.
Pole Position. Another, like, that was one of the first games I ever played in an arcade in my whole life. Might be the first game I ever played in an arcade that I like fully remember playing. I remember the arcade I was at and everything, and just like seeing that steering wheel and just being like, I need to do this. And like that noise that Pole Position made. Yeah. Anyways, a lot of memories and nostalgia.
I love it. The environmental cabinet, that would be like one of my top 10 cabinets I own in a home arcade, man. It's a great game.
Again, that kind of represents the arcade stuff. Obviously there's more arcade stuff to go into, that you could go into. There's a whole era of arcades. This one, Pitfall, the original Pitfall, I'm calling this out as like my representation of the Atari 2600 for me. And if you disagree with that, that's fine. But yeah, it's the most iconic Atari game. And yes, again, there's a bunch of iconic Atari games. A lot of them are just like the arcade ports though. Outrun, another arcade.
I mean, if you want to
Go ahead.
fight, like if I think Atari, I'm probably thinking like the most Atari game, they're going to be arcade ports. It's going to be like Space Invaders, Missile Command, and Asteroids are probably the ones I think of. Not like
great.
in terms of like what are the most interesting games, but like if I saw it in the background of a sitcom, it would be one of those 3 games on the Atari.
Sure.
Not Pitfall.
Yeah, I agree. I think Pitfall's up there. We can agree to fight. And also Activision, just so important. So, Dragon's Lair, again, as an arcade object, because I think, and you may not feel this way, but I feel like you just like found a Dragon's Lair and didn't know what to do, and you had to pay more than any other arcade game to play Dragon's Lair. And then you immediately died to a quick time event because you didn't really understand, because it doesn't play like a normal game. You're like, what the hell just happened? And you had just got Dragon's Laired is what happened until you realized what was going on. So that's a thing you can do.
Do people care about Dragon's Lair? I understand if you were 7 years old in the arcade in 1983, you were like, oh my God. But after that, like once you wasted your $1.50 on it, were you like, oh, this game sucks?
Yeah, that's exactly that is exactly my feeling about Dragon's Lair. I dislike it exactly for that arcade experience. I was like, fuck this game. It just stole my money. I just didn't play 3 other games because of this game. Fuck this game. Yeah, fuck Dragon's Lair. And I just wanted to bring up that. Anyways, there was an animated series, which is only funny to tell you about because it looks so much worse than the video game. The animation is so much worse. So go check that out.
Yeah,
One season.
A Don Bluth production.
No, Hanna-Barbera. Go Hanna-Barbera. Go in. Don't enjoy that. Even though I watched the shit out of that as a kid. Other arcade game, classic to me. I don't know about you, but Outrun. That was like a big one for me.
It's my favorite classic arcade game. I don't know, like, I know it's a huge game, but like, I have to be able to ask my mom, hey mom, do you remember Outrun? And I don't think she's going to remember Outrun, but I do know she'll remember Donkey Kong and Pac-Man. And I know she'll remember Frogger. Yeah. But I don't think she'll remember Outrun.
Frogger, really good. Yeah, I don't know. Also, Outrun's a little bit later, so I feel like there was a transition in the era of arcade, like what was happening with arcades.
Sure.
When Outrun came out. So that's why I threw that on the list as one you could go collect. Don't if you don't. Gauntlet, a big deal for me as far as arcades go. I don't know what your experience was, but man, Gauntlet was like the first game I ever saw people crowd around and put quarters down on. Like yeah, you saw like occasional games where, but like a full crowd, like 5 or 6 people deep trying to play a game. And I was like, what is this? And it was Gauntlet. So that was crazy to me.
So I grew up in like kind of the second gasp of arcades in the mid 90s. And like all the birthday parties that everyone had was always at an arcade. And the most popular game for us to play in like the mid 90s, where we had like Battletoads and Street Fighter 2 and like all the modern 90s games, the most popular game was Gauntlet 1. So yeah. Gauntlet, pretty big game.
Wizard needs food badly. Let's go. Okay. Here's where I get into NES games, and you'll forgive me, Sega, for not mentioning you in every other console, but these ones, aside from Atari, I feel like the NES just defined the 80s more. So if you're mad, you're mad. That's fine. I've got Super Mario Brothers. You can fight me if you want. You know that's about $150, and all the caveats, condition matters. Go find the version that's best for you. Probably not an oval seal. Don't do it, but you don't necessarily need a hang tab. Duck Hunt, Tyler might tell you different on that. He might be like, just go get a hang tab because they're not that expensive right now. And I wouldn't necessarily fight him on that. Duck Hunt, because, man, everyone hated that dog, and the Zapper was such a thing. Look, Gyromite isn't the thing because no one wanted to play Gyromite, but people played the shit out of Duck Hunt. Everyone, didn't matter. Your dad picked up the Duck Hunt Zapper and was like, I'm gonna shoot these ducks. So it just had a wider appeal.
No, Duck Hunt is the Galaga of NES. People think they like Duck Hunt, but you would not play Duck Hunt for more than 10 minutes.
No,
Duck Hunt's exhausting, dude.
But it is a game that literally everyone played and had some experience with. And if someone walked by it and you were playing Duck Hunt, they're like, what is this?
Yeah, everyone remembers playing it, but I don't think people remember playing it for like, 4 straight hours. Like, no, you were not playing Duck Hunt for 4 straight hours. You were not playing like Wild fucking Gunman for 4 straight hours. The Zapper games are gimmicks. There's only so much
oh my God.
to them.
I played so many gun games for so long.
Oh my God. Yeah, I don't hate Duck Hunt. I don't think it's like complete garbage. I think Duck Hunt has like a good difficulty to it. Like it tops out, I think it's like after 10 or 20 rounds. I think it tops out at like, it's like just like super challenging enough, but not impossible. Like it's not, I don't think it doesn't increase in difficulty forever, but the point where it caps out is really, really, really hard, which is good.
You got that double handhold on the zapper. You're too close to the screen trying to,
Yeah.
Just the things we used to do, like getting a smaller TV to play it on so we could put it on something so we could stand up and play. So we like weren't shooting down. So we were holding the gun at like chest level. We did a lot of dumb shit to play Duck Hunt. What we felt like was the optimal way to play Duck Hunt. Anyways.
I played Duck Hunt at a game convention. They got it was like a 4-inch CRT and they put it 10 feet away and you had to play Duck Hunt. And it actually worked. It was really weird how well it worked. But obviously it was very, very hard.
That's good though. That makes it interesting. Like watching people scrub out in the first 2 rounds of Duck Hunt. That's fun. So that's about $100. Again, all the variant caveats for anything black box or anything early Nintendo all apply here. The Legend of Zelda, Metroid. Again, you know what these games are. They're about $150-ish. Go get them. Mega Man. I feel like I put this on the list because I feel like someone else is going to fight me if I don't put it on the list. Not necessarily Tyler, but the internet at large that loves Mega Man more than me. But it's expensive. Like a good Mega Man is like $450 minimum. So
I don't know what's up with Mega Man because when you look at like the most expensive video game sales, every once in a while there'll just be like a $50,000 like first print sealed Mega Man, and like or not even first prints. There's later prints that have sold for $50,000 during like the biggest part of the hype. But like is Mega Man really up there with like the original Legend of Zelda and Super Mario Brothers 3, and there's only like so many games below. At the top. When you're talking like $20,000 and up games, we're talking about like the absolute most iconic games of all time that anyone on planet Earth would know. And like Mega Man 1 makes it up there. I understand Mega Man is a huge franchise. It's just
I don't get it either. And to that effect, look, I put Castlevania on the list, but I feel like Mega Man and Castlevania are still a tier down from those. Like, Super Mario and Zelda are a tier above Metroid. Metroid is a tier above Mega Man and Castlevania. As far as those most iconic things.
I will totally agree with that.
So,
Legend of Zelda and Mario are like A+, obviously, and like Metroid's like A, and like Mega Man and Castlevania should be A-, but in terms of prices, Mega Man's A+ up there with like the top tier Zelda stuff.
Yeah.
And specifically Mega Man 1. The one that most NES people ignore and everyone just plays 2 and 3. Yes.
The worst of the Mega Man games,
so weird.
The hard one. Yeah. And they're like, but you get the Dr. Whiteman, there's the error, the sticker on the... And it's like, okay, I get it. It does some collectory things that strokes the weird collector part of the brain, which must be the explanation. For me, anyways. Anyways, $450 is like your floor on Mega Man if you want it complete in box. Castlevania, about $180-ish. Again, lots of caveats on which Castlevania you get. Try not to get an oval seal, but do what you gotta do. And the last NES game I wanted to bring up, which I feel like defined an era, and again, less on the NES, more on the Game Boy, Tetris. This was what made moms play video games.
It's true. My mother-in-law plays Tetris.
I know lots of people. My wife she likes Dr. Mario more and as classically just beats the pants. I'm so bad at these games.
I'm more of a Puyo Puyo kind of guy because I had Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine growing up and I did not have a Tetris game because my parents ripped my Game Boy out of my hands and returned it for a Game Gear, Johnny.
I know. We all know, Tyler.
I would say don't choose between NES and Game Boy Tetris. You really just should get both. They're both iconic and great games for different reasons. I think Tetris on Game Boy is maybe more important, and the one at NES has lasted longer in terms of what people continue to compete on. If I was to own a copy of Tetris, Johnny, I would have a nice complete in box that was signed by Alexei Pajitnov, though. So if
that's
if
what
you
I
got a
would do,
lead
too.
on one of those,
I don't. I've never. Why would you even find one?
that would be crazy.
How would you even
know
get
what?
that
It would
done?
be even cooler if I was there when it was signed, even if I wasn't the one getting it signed. But man, if someone just had a Game Boy copy of Tetris signed by Alexei Pajitnov in my presence, that would be so cool.
Oh yeah, that it would be so weird for that to happen, and it would be weird for me to do it. Anyways, yeah, that's a thing that happened.
All right,
That was weird.
Hey, if you
it's yours,
die,
Tyler.
I'm getting
Yeah,
that.
if I
by the
die, it's
way.
yours. Yeah,
All right.
yeah, it's yours.
Even if it's like an unexplained death, like no questions
Yeah.
asked, I'm getting that.
No question. No question. If you murder me, it's yours.
Thank
But if you would just told me you were gonna murder me, I would just give it to you to not murder me.
Okay.
You know, so like, let's just have that be clear. Like, if you think you have to kill me, the threat of killing me is also enough for me just to be like, it's not that important to me.
God, I hate that AI are summarizing and analyzing our podcasts now, Johnny.
I know. It's
Gotta
great.
self-censor. I forgot.
There's a whole list of all the things we've ever said. And thank you, Tiger Wolf. Anyways, let's get into the thing that I think the 80s does the best besides video games. And that's movies, Tyler. 80s did so many actually things. But movies is one of the big ones. And again, we have a long list here, so I don't need to spend too much time on all these. You tell me when I hit one of your golden ones. Okay, Tyler?
All right. Big Trouble in Little China. There's a video game, right?
I didn't bring that up, and I don't know if there is. Feels
I
like
think there is
has to
actually
be.
a computer game of Big Trouble in Little China.
I was gonna say there's got to be like a Commodore 64 version.
Yeah.
If there's a game that you like, if there's a movie, if it didn't come out on like the Nintendo or the Atari, Commodore 64's got you. Don't worry about it.
Johnny, for the Commodore 64, ZX Spectrum, and Amstrad CPC only in Europe, you can get Big Trouble in Little China.
Absolutely, I knew that. Like, I didn't know that, but I 100% knew that.
Out of 13 ratings on Moby Games, it has a 1.3 stars out of 5.
Nice.
Good game.
I'm sure a lot of love and hard work was put into creating that game. In no particular order, Ghostbusters, Tyler. There are so many Ghostbusters games you can choose from, and they all have these different stories. We went into a lot of it, but anyways, Real Ghostbusters, the cartoon. This is Ghostbusters, the movie, specifically Ghostbusters 1, 1984. There's a Commodore 64 version, an NES version, a ZX Spectrum, Atari 2600. I think I picked the Atari 2600 one. There's even a Sega Master System, but these are all like wildly different games that like licensing things did weird things for it. Go pick the one you like. There's like, you can spend $10, you can spend $70. That's like your range on these games. $70 is obviously the NES one, $10 for like a Commodore. The ZX Spectrum one comes in a little expensive at like $20 for a ZX Spectrum game.
Wow, really expensive.
Yeah, for a ZX Spectrum game. Atari 2600, you get it like $60, and the Sega Master System one around $30. Yeah. Ghostbusters has a complicated history.
What's the first one like? You don't want to play these games.
No.
So what's just the first
believe
one, just so I can get one from my collection? Do I just get the NES one? Is that the answer?
Just the NES one is the answer, I think.
Okay.
Or get the Atari 2600 one, because they both have like the same iconic box.
Yeah, and they're kind of the same game, right? Did the Atari one come out first?
The Atari one, I think, wait, is that the one that didn't come out first and came out weird and late? I can't remember. There's too much history with Ghostbusters, and I didn't want to look up all 50 versions of Ghostbusters for this. You can collect a lot of Ghostbusters games. Get Ghostbusters 2
It was
with the
designed by
balloon.
David Crane for the Commodore 64. Are you kidding me? So the original Ghostbusters came on a Commodore 64, which is not surprising because that is just an arcane and stupid video game. So if you tell me, oh yeah, this used to be like a weird computer game, I get that. But designed by video game engineer genius
Legend.
David Crane.
Well, you know which one to get?
That's upsetting.
Then. Go get it. Yeah, go look at all the different versions. So, like, they all are kind of trying to do the same thing, but it's a weird series. Anyways, Alien. You ever heard of Alien?
Yeah, that 1979 horror movie that everyone loves.
Yep, well,
It's not emblematic of the 80s, I'm sorry.
No, but Alien as a franchise, there's a bunch of them. So you get Alien, Alien the computer game. Again, there's Alien 3. There's all kinds of stuff going on. Or did Alien 3 come out in the 90s? I think it was the 90s.
Alien
Anyways,
3
you get Alien
like
and Aliens. Anyways, that was a big deal. And you can get it. You can get the one to get is Alien for the Atari 2600. But there's Aliens, the computer game on the Commodore 64 that you can also get for like $20.
Again, Johnny, which thing came first? Because I'm not going to play any of the Alien video games.
Alien came out first.
Thank you. Which one?
For the Atari 2600, came out in remember, it's like one of the earliest movie games. It's like 1981.
It is one of the earliest movie games, and it is among the earliest games where you can conceivably play as a female character, because I believe it's a maze game and you've got multiple people, and you would imagine one of them is Ripley, but it is not specifically gendered. I went in a whole rabbit hole of looking into female protagonists, and there are multiple Alien games that are kind of sticks in the mud because you play as the crew of the Nostromo, of which one of them is Ripley, obviously, but it is not identified as such in the game. That's just a stupid piece of trivia for you to never bring up again. But
the sim game where you're on the Nostromo, just like text adventuring, it's the best. Anyways, E.T. the Extraterrestrial. You've heard of this game. Very famously, a bad game, always called the worst game. Alamogordo was put in a dump, the landfill. They dug it up. It made it very expensive for some dumb reason. This was like a $10 game forever, and then it became worth $50 to $100 or even more if you got that thing that said they dug it up out of the trash for you. So, like, literally paying for trash now. Expensive dollars for a very poorly put together game, but E.T. was very 1980s. Go get your Spielberg on. If you don't like that one, how about Raiders of the Lost Ark for the Atari 2600?
No,
like that one?
I'm keeping you on E.T., Johnny.
Oh, no, don't do it. Do we hit
just
it?
because out of all these, I do think not only is this one of the most emblematic of the 80s in terms of being a movie, I think the video game crash of 1983 and E.T. as the video game industry has chosen E.T. as the symbol of the video game crash of 1983, despite there being many more multiple factors. I think it's a great collectible. It's one of these games. This is a terrible example, similar to Concord, that will always have this weird asterisk, and history will remember it for how bad it is and for what it represents.
It
and I don't think it's ever
wasn't
going away.
Atari mismanaging Atari. That had nothing to do with it. It was definitely this one game that did the whole thing, right?
This one game in a sea of how many terrible Atari games are there? This one hyped release that people probably didn't even realize was as bad as it was. They just overproduced it and undersold it.
It literally just got to be the visual because people were so, like, as video games crashed, they were seen throwing this game based on a very popular franchise in the garbage. And that's how it happens.
Also, like, Atari, fucking Pac-Man came out on Atari, and that game was fucking garbage. No one credits that for the crash.
Yeah.
You
got more?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say Raiders of the Lost Ark, because we need to talk about Raiders of the Lost Ark. We needed to talk about Indiana Jones. And there are many Indiana Jones games that came out in the 80s, but this is the one. Get the one for the Atari 2600. I believe there's an error cartridge or something too. Like, there's an error label. There's like 2 different variants of this. But just go get any one of the Atari 2600 ones. Get it in a nice box. It's not that expensive. It's $40. It's silver box though. So if you get like a dent in it, it shows up kind of bad. So try and find a nice one.
Yeah, I think it's really common. It's one of these like common sealed Atari games, so you should be able to get a complete in box, like really nice, no problem.
Yep, just like if it's $40, then just know you're probably going to spend $70 if you want the nicer version. And if you want that kind of thing, then just go buy the nicer one. Okay, these two I'm putting together, Tron and Tron Deadly Discs. Okay, Tron for me is more of an arcade game, and I don't know how you feel about that.
I wouldn't even know what game you're talking about if you weren't talking about the arcade game.
Okay, yeah. Well, there's other versions of Tron apparently. So to me, it's not even about the movie for me of Tron. It is about the game. Like, it was just a staple arcade game. You saw that blue joystick and you're like, holy shit, it's Tron. We're doing it. So, yeah, I have this listed in the movie section, but I have it in my brain. It's more of an arcade game that symbolized the 80s, even though.
You're saying you think of
like
the game Tron more than the movie?
As something of the 80s? Yeah. Yeah.
Huh. All right. I mean, I think of both, so. I think this is one of the better picks on this list of being like the most 80s thing, because it is something that is so absolutely 80s, both the video game being in the golden age of arcades and the movie having like the most 80s effects and themes of all time. Like, this is the one. Go buy a Tron arcade cabinet.
Yeah. Go do it. 1982 this thing came out, so. And then you get Tron Deadly Discs on the Intellivision, $20.
You see, that's bullshit. No one wants Tron Deadly Discs. What you want is Discs of Tron, the sequel to the arcade game, which has nothing to do with the arcade game, had an environmental cabinet. It wasn't quite sit down. It wasn't quite stand up. It was almost like a bench that was at like bar height. So you sat down in this. It's kind of like an upright game, but you get to sit down a little, just like a little chill out and rest. And it had speakers all around you and like black lights, and it was like all Troned out on the inside. And then the actual cabinet played a 3D. It was almost like a 3D version of Pong, where you're trying to hit the other guy off his discs. It's a little bit maybe like Windjammers, you could think of it like. And I think it's one of the more collectible arcade cabinets that's ever been produced, because it is one of the most complex,
it's iconic,
and visually striking arcade cabinets that's ever been produced. They're super rad. We've been talking. I've brought up a bunch of collectible arcade stuff. I mean, it is the 80s, like Star Wars, the original Star Wars, and I think this environmental Discs of Tron. Will you
tell people what an environmental cabinet is?
Yeah, so the environmental cabinet means that you're not running up and standing in front of it. You are like stepping inside of it like a cockpit, like it goes around back of you, but it doesn't completely. There's no like doors that close in on you. It's just like a little cockpit for you.
Yep. It's like a photo booth, but for video games.
That's it. Super cool. Don't buy any arcade cabinet, but especially don't buy a very large arcade cabinet like that, because you will not use it as much as you wish you would. You will look at it every day and be like, oh man, I spent $2,000 on that environmental Discs of Tron. There it still is. Oh, it's in my garage.
Yeah, unless you want it as a display piece and you're happy just looking at it because you like it aesthetically, don't make this purchase. And I feel that way about most pinballs too. So like, unless you are really like, love that game, like don't.
Pinball you should only buy for the gameplay, I think. They're so big.
I mean, they're huge. I have my Batman 89 one in like my Batman 89 corner, but one, I like it and do play it, but not as much as the price would warrant, for sure. But I also just love the way it looks. So,
see, on the other hand, I think Tron is probably like top 5 arcade cabinets I would buy to not play it and just put it in a room somewhere. Like, I would have a Tron, a Donkey Kong, or a Pac-Man. I don't like Pac-Man, but like those, that's good set dressing. Tron might be the best set dressing because it has a very iconic cabinet shape. It's like this weird hexagon. It's got like the glow in the dark joystick. It looks awesome.
The blue joystick is so cool. Like, you're just like, oh shit, Tron. Was the joystick actually blue, or is this a blue light in it and a clear stick?
See, I don't know what was factory or if I played like modded ones at this point, so I don't know what it looked like to begin with. If it didn't originally had a light, someone at some point put lights into that cabinet.
Yeah. So anyways, go get yourself some Tron. Very iconic, very 80s. Gremlins, Tyler, also very 80s. You want another game with a complicated history? Gremlins. So it came out on the Atari 2600, the Commodore 64, and the Atari 5200. This one you should buy the Atari 5200 version of, because it's the same box as the 2600. Came out first there, or on the Commodore. Might be first on the Commodore. But the box you want is that one. And the Atari 2600 one is rare. Doesn't come up that often. Condition sensitive. Whereas you can get the 5200 one and it will service you just fine for like $50. If you want...
No one wants the Atari 5200 version of anything.
Yes.
Don't tell anyone to settle for an Atari 5200 game. You should never have to set. You should only be buying the games you want, and the game you want is never the Atari 5200 game of anything.
In this case, it might be.
No, it's not. Get the how expensive could Gremlins on Atari 2600 be?
Oh, between $200 and $500.
That is so dumb. Just don't buy it. Wait. What are you gonna? You don't want the Atari 5200. I know no one wants the Atari 5200 version of it. If you,
no, they do.
I understand placeholders, but Atari 5200 placeholders, that's low.
No, it's great.
All right,
just go do it.
I'm sorry, you can't imagine how uninterested I am in talking about Gremlins when we just talked about one of like the most iconic arcade games of all time.
But Gremlins, also a Christmas movie. So like we're doing the thing right after Christmas. It's already over. Anyways, Gremlins, cool. You want to know this is on the list because I think Blade Runner is one of the most important movies, especially of the 80s and of sci-fi. And yes, based off Phil K. Dick's work, all the caveats, right? And you want some Harrison Ford in there. There's a lot of Harrison Ford on this list because who's more 80s than Harrison Ford, really, as far as being just like a leading man.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Blade Runner has a super duper, really disappointing release as a video game. You'd think something like sci-fi should be like a really cool video game, and they did make many video games based off, but its initial release on the Commodore 64 ZX Spectrum and the Amstrad CPC, it's like $20, and it just says like Blade Runner like sideways on it, and the game is terrible. And just like, if you need Blade Runner in your life, and because you're like, Blade Runner is the most 80s thing I can think of, I get that, but yeah, I would pass on this. But you can go buy it, $20.
People like the
really
90s game. Yep. It's a boring point and click graphic adventure.
That's the better one. That's the one you should buy, though.
Yeah, which is perfect because Blade Runner is the boring movie.
Oh God, shut up. How you like you like DOS Boot, all of it. Like, yes, and DOS Boot is good, but like it's not riveting until it's stressful, and then you're just like, okay, go watch Blade Runner. You're telling me it's too slow for you? That's crazy.
I like some slow, boring movies.
I know.
But, Blade Runner's a lot, right?
Oh, my God.
Oh, my wife is nodding next to me. What did I... I do like some slow, boring movies.
Oh, that you like slow, boring movies?
Yeah, I just watched A Stalker last night. That was a long, slow, boring, plotting movie.
Oh, good. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. We already covered Indiana Jones on this. But yeah, Temple of Doom's great. Rambo, because you need Sylvester Stallone on the list. And it was that or a Rocky game. And this one you can buy on the NES, the Famicom, or the MSX for about $75. Got anything to say about that?
Is there one I should care about? Have you ever talked to anyone about a Rambo game?
No.
All right.
Nope.
The only Rambo game I could think of is the NES one, so get that, I guess.
That's the one I would pick. And someone will come in and correct us and be like, you missed. It's like, okay. Here's a game that's interesting. Labyrinth, the computer game. We've talked about this on the show before. You know what's cool about this game? It's got a 13-hour timer.
Something about the Japanese one. The Famicom box has the title written in English, so you'll look at a lot of like 70 Famicom games, and you'll only be able to read 3 of them, and you'll be like, oh yeah, Labyrinth, David Bowie.
Yeah. So it came out on the Apple II, though, and it's a Lucasfilms game. It's the first one, I think. And yeah, it's got that 13-hour timer, and it's kind of expensive. It's like $250. And it's not the Commodore 64 and the MSX version and the Famicom. These are not all the same game. Those are kind of similar, but the Apple II is like its own thing. So So go check that out. Also on the PC 88. But yeah, pretty cool game. Pretty cool.
I'm checking it out. There seems to be multiple games named Labyrinth because it's not a very creative title.
Yeah. So if you type Labyrinth, the computer game, you'll get the Apple II version, I think.
Oh, here's one for just $1,300, Johnny. Is that the one you're talking about?
No, you can find it for less than that.
Okay.
You'll know when you see like the big box PC version. It like looks
that's what I'm looking at, the big box Apple version, because I want the original thing. You're telling me this is the first Lucasfilm Games game?
I think so.
So should I buy this $1,300 one? It seems like a real piece of history.
I feel like you can get a better price on it.
Should I best offer $1,100?
No, don't do that.
It wasn't their first game, but it was the first adventure game?
Is that what it is?
Yeah. That's so weird.
And also this game is like super important for setting up the Lucasfilms like style of game, like their point and click, the wheel, and like all the like.
I feel like you edited this game into history. I would have just put Maniac Mansion like so obviously as the first one because everyone cares about that. I have never heard anyone talk about Labyrinth in the history of Lucasfilm adventure games.
Yeah, it's so important. Like the whole feel of Lucas Films adventure games like doesn't even happen without Labyrinth. That's where they started.
It even looks like Maniac Mansion. Oh, that's so weird.
Just blowing your mind.
Oh, and it's got like good reviews.
Yeah. Oh, did I just make you spend money? I think I did. Did I just hear cash being spent?
Yeah. Oh, let me go buy it now. It's only $1,300.
Yeah.
No, if it's like that expensive, like I don't care that much.
No,
it's
you can get like a version. You can get it for like $300. So
that's still
or less
for a game. I don't care enough.
In the big box PC world, that's chump change. Come on, Tower. You got to spend.
Weren't we just talking about this? How like I bought like all the Might and Magic games and all the Heroes games, just like all these like big box PC games you have to buy. You got to buy all the Lucas. I already have all the friggin' Lucasfilm and Sierra Adventure games. And it's just like whether or not you care about these games, whether or not you play them, these are the games that PC game collectors have. And I don't need. This is.
Hey.
It's the first one. It is something I would buy, but still, I don't need it.
It's historic.
I know it is, and it seems rare.
Yeah. If you want to talk about Sierra games, hey, did you know that the Spiderwick Chronicles is a Sierra game, and you can get that on like every garbage system, like the Wii, the Xbox 360, PS2. I think the PSP, like all these systems, but it also came out again by Sierra on the PC, and it's got a DVD case version, but a rarer small box PC game that you can get. Just saying, go get your Sierra games.
I don't even know what the Spiderwick Chronicles is as a book series, let alone whatever you're talking about.
It's a book series. Games. It's a book series that became a movie that was not that successful, but is getting a new series coming out, I think, this year. So, now's the time to buy it while it's like $5.
You never know when the next Piglet's big game is.
You never know. Also, right now, there's a movie ticket variant, a CD variant of it. There's a French variant. There's a lot of variants for this game. Spiderwick Chronicles, not having to do with the 80s. Failed movies of the aughts. Anyways, let's keep talking about movies. The Goonies, Tyler, not Goonies 2, The Goonies. Go get it for the Famicom or the Commodore 64 or the MSX. Came out in 1986. It's $40, $150, or $85. So the Commodore 64 one, actually the most expensive version. Does that surprise you?
It does, because actually the Goonies 2 in 2021 sold for $14,000 on Heritage Auctions.
Okay.
That iconic NES game that everyone's always talking about, Goonies 2.
Yeah, Konami game. People love it.
I think Goonies 1 is almost the same. I haven't played Goonies 1, but I think it's like very, very similar to Goonies 2. If you want the Famicom version. And you do, because that's the perfect thing to put next to your Goonies 1 and be like, look, I have both. You ever wonder why this one's called Goonies 2? Look, here's Goonies 1 on Famicom. Yeah.
It explains things. It's nice.
Out of all the stupid renaming thing, how crazy is it that like we got Final Fantasy 2 and Final Fantasy 3 and all these stupid Japanese renamed things, but the one thing they didn't rename was Goonies 2.
Yeah,
why?
Like, no, that would be
been
confusing.
The perfect one to just rename to Goonies. No one is ever going to question, I wonder when Goonies 3 is coming out. Like, no one is wanting a sequel to this. It could have just been the Goonies.
It could have. I was like, is it saying it's the Goonies 2 because it's a sequel to the movie? I was very confused.
I thought that most of my life. I thought it was Goonies 2 because the game is the sequel to the movie, but it's not. It's the sequel to the Goonies game that you never played.
Yep. Okay. Karate Kid has a game for the NES, famously an LJN game. It's not expensive. It's $60, but the Karate Kid is a franchise that has endured, and if you're into Cobra Kai, also has a Little People series, so hit another one of those. Also Gremlins, forgot to mention that. So we've hit a few more Little People series. You can go get the Karate Kid, and you can wax on or wax off, and crane kick and sweep the leg. You can do all the things for $60 on the NES. Top Gun on the NES, another game that you've definitely heard of and has a sequel, but go by like such a big movie and had another movie that just came out and was also successful so many years later. You can get a CIB copy for $30.
I feel like successful is an understatement. Isn't the new Top Gun like one of the highest grossing movies ever?
Yeah. I don't know if ever, but it was like one of the highest after COVID. So.
It only made it up to number 11 with its $1.5 billion that it made.
Yeah. Tom Cruise as quite the action star. He commits. RoboCop. Ever heard of that? RoboCop is like one of the most 80s things. And it's like counterculture and satire and just all these things rolled into one. And somehow it also got a cartoon in the 90s. Like, RoboCop is such a weird thing. And then they made the most pedestrian, sanitized, boring remake of it not that long ago. And it's like, man, RoboCop.
Don't remake RoboCop. What are you doing, guys? Don't make RoboCop into a cartoon. What have we done with the RoboCop franchise? It's the perfect movie. It's the least overrated thing about the 80s. Love me RoboCop, Johnny. Who wouldn't love RoboCop?
So the only like worst, dumber remake was what's it called? Total Recall. Like they totally sanitized that remake too and just made it like you missed what made Total Recall interesting, and they did the same thing with the RoboCop remake. It's just like whatever. Back to the Future. Let me talk about RoboCop games. You can get it on the NES, Commodore 64, ZX Spectrum, Amstrad, CPC, the MSX, everything. You can get it on everything, and it was even an arcade game. Go get the NES version though. That's the version that you probably want, and it's not that expensive. It's like $35.
All right, I don't
$35 to $70.
I don't care about any of those. I'm gonna say get RoboCop 3 for the PC because it is one of the more important early history of first-person shooter games. I think it came out right before Wolfenstein 3D. Or at the same time as Wolfenstein 3D, but it looks so much more like an FPS as we would recognize them today. Although, very weird because they had no idea what an FPS was yet.
I wouldn't disagree with you, except I think it came out in the 90s, but a great pickup, regardless.
Sorry.
So, Back to the Future. Sure, you've heard of this one. Another LJN game. Again, this not a great
super
game,
good
but
game.
Such a super good. Again, you would only go buy this game for the NES for $80 CIB is if you really needed to own a Back to the Future video game, and this wouldn't even be the coolest one to own. I would get the Back to the Future on the Super Famicom.
Oh, sorry, that's the 90s. We can't talk about that.
I'm saying if you needed to, I said, if you need to own a Back to the Future video game, okay? Not if you need to collect the 80s. But if you do, then that's the one.
And it's going to be more interesting on your shelf because people are going to be like, oh, check that out. And I think it's kind of expensive too.
Yeah, it is.
And everyone looks at Back to the Future and NES as like a joke.
Yes, and it's an LGN. And it's actually the Super Famicom version is a perfect counterpunch to that because you're like, oh, isn't that the dumb game? And you're like, oh, no. And you get to talk about why that game is actually not a joke and interesting. Anyways, Batman 1989 we covered because it's mother effing Batman and it was a cultural phenomenon. Okay. Here's one for you. The Dark Crystal. You ever seen it?
I don't think so.
Okay, so there's more Jim Henson. Anyways, so there's a version of the Dark Crystal for the Apple IIc. Very important to get the poster with it. It is a $300 game. It is kind of expensive. I just lost one with the poster in it, and it's always more expensive with the poster, and the poster is always missing. And I literally bid $301 with 5 seconds left to go, and the auction hung on me. Even though I had my Gixxon bid in, I was like, oh, it's not enough. Let me increase it. And it just hung on me and did not go through, even though I was on my computer, and it sold for less than that. And I was so mad.
Just update your Gixxon bid. Just overpay to begin. I have literally never increased my bid in Gixxon and been like, oh man, I really regret increasing the bid so I won that. Never. I've never regretted it.
The auction was mislabeled as no poster, and I messaged the guy and he was like, no, it does have the poster. I found it later. I was like, God damn it. Dude, I'm so mad. I was so mad. Especially because I was like, oh, I should update Gixxon. I was like, I don't know if I have enough time now because it was like a minute left. I was like, oh shit, because this message came in right as it was closing. It was frantic, and I was so fucking mad. That guy's probably like, oh, he asked that question, didn't even win. What an idiot. Anyways, there is another game called Gelfling Adventure. Do you know what a Gelfling is? It's the thing, and it's the creatures. One of the creatures in the Dark Crystal.
I absolutely don't.
Okay, so it's not the bird-looking ones, okay? God, what are they called? Not the Slee Stacks. That's from Land of the Lost. Anyways. Something like that. The Gelflings are the mousier looking ones. And there's a game called Gelfling Adventure. Have you ever heard of this?
No, I've absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
Well, let me tell you real quick about Gelfling Adventure. Let me just tell you about the price. $3,000 for a game you've never heard of.
What is this?
It's a text-based adventure game, okay? So, it's text adventure. It's on the Commodore 64. It came out in 1984. It's a Sierra game, so if you're doing that whole thing, you have to go get it. And, yeah, it's just rare, I guess. I don't know. I found it when I was doing this episode because I was like, oh, I got to do the Dark Crystal. And then I looked, I'm like, what the fuck is the Gelfling Adventure?
It is a junior adventure game for ages 9 and up, meaning that it has the same difficulty of a game that comes out in like 2024.
Yeah.
So it's a kids Sierra game. So Sierra is probably rare. So Sierra collectors just they need to get everything, and I got my mystery house, and I got all these rare games from like 1980, and they just don't have the weird kids. It's probably hard to find complete in box because it's got like the registration card and it's got a map.
Baggy game, I believe.
What?
I think it's a baggy game.
No, there's a boxed one. There's a $3,000 boxed one at least. Let me look if there's.
Is it a box or one of the flap games, like the folder games?
It looks like a kind of a box. It kind of opens up. It's like got that thick plastic on the inside, but it opens up like a folder.
Okay.
Anyway, wow. That's stupid. Right? I hate this. Thanks for bringing this to my attention.
Yeah. They're not Slee Stacks. They're called Skeksis, the bird-looking ones. Anyways. Really good skit. If you care about that, you can go see some fun skits about that. It's called The Dark Crystal. Go watch it. From Robot Chicken. Anyways, Tyler, let me tell you about some other movies. Hey, Friday the 13th, because horror. So Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, all that. You can get the Commodore 64 version of Friday the 13th, which is the cooler one from 1986, though. Has blood caps in it, or you can just get a basic tape version. It's like $200-ish. If you want the NES version from 1989, it's $100. Friday the 13th, the game, much cooler cover on the Commodore, but the NES version is iconic. So it's got that going for it. So
yeah,
either
and
one
it's
you
a
pick
super
there.
unique game, and like maybe the first survival horror game like that. Just,
And it was made by Rare.
yeah,
so,
you should own Friday the 13th and NES. It's like one of the better NES games to own, I would say.
Yeah, and I know it's going to say LJN and people are going to make their jokes, but remember Rare actually made this. So, yeah, go check it out. Like they're both good versions to own. The Blood Capsule is one of the coolest includes in the game ever, though. It might be like top 10 add-ons into a game, like just bullshit material that they give you. I love it so much.
I would have to think about it to prove you wrong because I strongly disagree.
You strongly
Not
disagree
strongly
that Blood
disagree.
Capsules?
I kind of disagree, let's say.
All right. Let's do that episode. Best pack-ins ever.
Is that a joke because we already did that? Yeah, okay, got it. I got the joke.
Okay. WrestleMania. So I'm moving out of movies now, and this is just like, I didn't know where to put this. I just blindly labeled it pop culture. WWF WrestleMania for the NES came out in 1989 because, man, there's nothing more 80s than wrestling. Like, man, WrestleMania, Hulkamania, the whole thing was running wild on you, brother, in the 1980s. And you should go pick up a copy on the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System, for like $60.
Wasn't wrestling's most popular era the 90s, though, Johnny?
I don't know. Like,
You're
it was
right, though.
super
All right,
popular in the 80s, too. Like,
I'll take Hulkamania. People are buying like Hulk Hogan rookie trading cards. People are insane. So sure, I'll associate Hulk Hogan with the 80s.
Okay, great. You want to know something you're definitely going to associate with the 80s? Cabbage Patch Kids, Adventures in the Park. This is under toys, the heading of toys, Tyler. Because that's all Cabbage Patch
Kids. And then you added on Adventures in the Park, and it's like, oh, it's something that no one's ever heard of? Great.
Yeah, because it's a ColecoVision game. Also for the MSX. I believe there was a prototype for the Atari that was never actually released. Anyways, Cabbage Patch Mania was a whole deal. If you never saw it, it was like the idea of the Christmas toy that like made stampedes happen. Like when you see footage from the 80s, it's usually the Cabbage Patch footage that you're seeing. So, man, I don't understand what was going on in 1984 that made this happen, but people had to go get them Cabbage Patch Kids. You didn't want to disappoint your children. I wonder what scalpers were like back then and how much they were making on Cabbage Patch Kids. Probably a whole lot of money.
I mean, probably not. It's probably weird without eBay, right? Maybe like people are probably paying vastly different prices because you didn't really have a place to go, right?
Yeah, probably. But I bet, man, like there was just ads in papers like, I have a Cabbage Patch Kid. It's this one, $500. And we're talking 80s money here. So early 80s money. Like after a financial decline too. Oof. Anyways, if you want it on the ColecoVision, it's about $100, which is kind of expensive. And the boxes are pretty beat looking that I've seen. So hold out for a good one. If you want the MSX version, you're going to pay $900, and it was made by Konami. So if you're a complete Konami collector, then have fun.
Don't be a complete Konami collector. I understand Konami has made some of the best games of all time, especially in the 80s. Just because of what they've become, a shambling pachinko mass, you're not allowed to be a fanboy of this company. It's like being a Microsoft fanboy. They're just like a bad company that you can't really be a fan of. You could like some of the things they did in the past, but I reject the concept of being a Konami completionist collector. Whereas I understand like the Sierra collectors who are going crazy, it is because not only do they like the games, but they like the people behind the company of Sierra.
Yeah.
Also, Johnny, there's 2 ColecoVision Cabbage Patch games. There's Adventures in the Park, and then there's the Picture Show, which is more expensive. That's more like $100 complete in box. I don't know why. Who cares? But there's 2.
I did not know that.
Also,
because I don't collect Cabbage Patch games.
There's a prototype of Adventures in the Park. It just is a white label that says Cabbage Patch #1 for a cool $200. Buy it now. No one's buying it. That is how desirable this game is.
You should go get it.
Oh wow, this guy has a lot of prototypes. Got
Did he make
Burger
them himself?
Time, Antarctic Adventure. They're all $200. No one cares about your ColecoVision prototypes. Maybe if you had like some Atari loaners, something people actually care about, we'll be talking.
All right. Tyler, did I already talk about Barbie? I talked about Barbie. Yeah, we talked about it in the intro. Barbie for the Commodore 64, really cool cover, an Epix cover. And that's it for toys. And we covered G.I. Joe earlier, as I had mislabeled. Tyler, this is where I bring it to you to talk to you about some TV shows. And again, there's a lot of iconic 80s TV shows that have games, but I have one that might be one of the most iconic. Do you want to know what it is?
Yes.
Dallas. Did you know there's a video game based on Dallas?
Johnny, I had no idea. Why would you even make a video game based on the hot 70s through 90s soap opera Dallas?
I don't know, but, you know, there was nothing that, like, the Cabbage Patch craze for kids, it was Who Shot JR for the rest of America, and people wanted to know. Them adults needed it. So there's a game for the Commodore 64 and the TRS-80 called The Dallas Quest. Tyler, The Dallas Quest. This is not fiction, people. There's not a joke. This is a game that exists, that people know about, and it's like $50 to $70 depending on condition. It's out there. You can go play a Dallas-based video game.
What? Johnny, it's a soap opera for moms.
It's not a soap opera because it was on primetime, buddy.
It's a show for moms.
It was a show for everyone.
There were probably little digest magazines you got at like the checkout aisle of the grocery store that talked about what was going on in this week's episode of Dallas. Johnny, how is there a Dallas video game? What do you, Johnny, you know how many video games I've thought of in my life? I spend a lot of my time thinking about video games. You can't just come out here and tell me there's a video game based on hit TV show Dallas.
Yeah, there is, and I'm willing to tell you even more about it, actually, Tyler. It's a text adventure game. So, what do you think the crossover for Dallas and text adventure games are in 1984?
It's a graphic adventure, so it has a text interface, but it does have graphics showing you what's going on.
Does it?
Yes.
I thought it was just text adventure. Anyways, it's in 1984. That's cool. Text adventure with graphics. I see in the description now. Anyways. Apparently, it's also on the Apple II, which I did not know. This game is based on the hit series Dallas. You take the role of a private investigator hired by Sue Ellen Ewing to recover a secret oil map hidden in South America. However, the journey is fraught with danger, including jungle wildlife, treacherous puzzles, and the schemes of the infamous J.R. Ewing.
Who shot him?
I don't know. You tell me.
I think their name began with a K. I'm not the biggest Dallas fan. Speaking of things that like, I don't know if people remember that. Like He-Man didn't really carry going forward. Does anyone under the age of 40 know what Dallas is?
I don't know, especially like the it was such a weird thing. It was Kristen Shepard, by the way.
It was a K. All right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's I don't know, like, and it's like the end or the beginning of the 80s too. I don't know, but there's a Dallas game. Really, I just wanted to tell everyone that there's a Dallas game.
Guys, there's a Dallas game.
That's got to be weird for people. I hope someone else thinks that's weird. And this game is popular because, like, at least to some degree, it's known. People buy it. It's not like it's not selling. It sells. People bid on this, Tyler. And it's weird because, again, you and I talk and think about video games more than most humans, for sure. And neither of us had any idea.
Yeah. People are buying this, and I'm not setting up a save search. I have better things to do with my money than buy the Dallas computer game, Johnny. But there is a sealed one right now, going for $90 so far.
Maybe
it's an open auction.
Gixon, go do it. Okay. Some more TVs games real quick, and I'm just going to run through these. This is the end of our list. Miami Vice. Okay, so basically GTA made a game about Miami Vice, but there was one for the Commodore 64 and the ZX Spectrum and Amstrad CPC. All these didn't come out in America, though, which is weird because Miami Vice was so popular. Don Johnson, everyone wanted that Miami look, big colors, white pants, the whole deal. You can get that for about $20. Knight Rider. Tyler, everyone knows KITT, right? One of the most famous cars in the world. It's like the Batmobile, the DeLorean, and KITT might be the most famous cars from the 80s. And right, I don't, if I'm like the Ecto-1, I struggle to think of others, but I'm sure there are. Anyways, in a line of famous cars, one of the most famous, and David Hasselhoff. So yeah, on the MSX and NES in 1990. It's about $50. There's other 80s titles that like every 80s title you can think of, like movies got something, but you got like Airwolf out there, A-Team, there's a game. So there's a lot of this stuff out there. There's a lot of TV shows, but we didn't want to like belabor the point any further.
What's the one with the weird puppet people?
What's that?
What's the one with the weird puppet people? Is it Thunderbirds?
Thunderbirds from like the 60s or 70s?
Yeah, that's it. Any chance that went through the 80s? That did not. That show ended in 1966. All right. I was off a little bit.
I think it got a movie though in the 90s.
All right. Well, hey, so if you average out the TV show and the movie, Thunderbirds is kind of something from the 1980s. Is there a video game?
I don't know. I've never looked. I didn't even think to look.
Johnny, is there a video game in the 80s? Yes, there's a Thunderbirds video game on the Commodore 64 and ZX Spectrum. You know it's there. Come on.
Of course. How silly of me. I'm sure there's a Lost in Space game somewhere. Actually, I'd be surprised if there wasn't. Again, one of these old properties that kind of carried through and then they like tried to revive in the 90s. The 90s is a weird time for revivals where they like tried to do the thing that they're doing successfully now. Is they're like, which of these properties can we pull out? And there was some standouts like the Addams Families and stuff. And then there's a lot of not standouts. So
I only know the 90s Lost in Space. That's the only Lost in Space I have any idea.
Yes, that's like a black and white television show.
Yeah.
From back in the day. Like Twilight Zone, they like pulled out in the 80s and you had stuff that like they tried, but properties didn't stick like they do now. And that was kind of my point. So most of this stuff has had some sort of revival recently, except even Dallas had a revival not so long ago, which is wild to me. Anyways, that's it. That's how you could collect the 80s if you wanted to. Tell us what things we missed that you think we should have put in the quintessential collect the 80s list. I'm curious what we list. I made this mostly from, just being a child in the 80s and thinking about it. So there are lots of gaps because this is pretty specific to my experience. So you guys tell me what we didn't get. And now, Tyler, we can transition to the 90s part of the show where we answer a question.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Did we talk about the Boeing MH-47 Chinook helicopter? That was a pretty cool thing from the 80s.
We did not. Would you like to?
No, I mean, it's just something we missed. 1988 Honda Civic SI. That was a classic.
Iconic, yeah. Oh, I forgot the DeLorean and iconic cars. What a miss. Someone out there
we
was screaming, and then I just said the DeLorean. Yeah. I know we had it, but I didn't say it when I was talking about it. Yeah. So I'm glad I caught that. Someone there I know was dying inside.
Tiger Wolf asks, what's your favorite spooky season character? Could be horror, Halloween, or gothic fantasy. And I responded, I look forward to answering this in January. Tiger Wolf, here we are. In January.
You did it. What a pull, Tyler. It's like you did this on purpose. You did this on purpose, right? You held this one back. I love that. You nailed it.
Well, I think I already know the answer. Johnny, you like vampires, and I like Ghostface from the Scream movies.
Yep, this is true.
We've kind of already discussed that recently.
Yep.
Shackfish asks, have you considered writing off any of the expenses associated with your collection and or keeping track of investment into the collection for tax purposes?
Yeah, but it would need to be a business of some sort. So you would need a business license, or we would have to be registered as a corporation. So like I could register technically Collector's Quest, and that would go a long way for us, but it would also set us up for some liabilities, which I'm not super interested in. And then like every purchase theoretically I make that's like researching the show and I just need to see it, or like do a quick Instagram video I could then, I guess, start writing off or getting into, but I don't know. Then it feels like it's not my hobby. Then it feels like it's business.
Yep. I think if you're getting like tax write-offs on buying stuff for resale, like you're not supposed to be owning that for personal enjoyment. It's supposed to be for resale for the business, which like very obviously I'm owning this stuff for my personal enjoyment. I have a podcast about how much I like my video games. So I don't know if the IRS is looking at the ChatGPT summarization of the podcast. They're going to come after me for whatever I'm writing off and not paying sales tax on. But no, I've considered it, but also I sell almost nothing and I just don't care. I realize I'm probably not in the most tax advantageous position to sell things. I don't have receipts for half my stuff. Like, I would take a bath in taxes if I sold it all. But you know what? The most likely, when people are selling a collection, I feel like half the time it's the collector died and now the family just wants to fucking get rid of it. So even if I have all my ducks in a row with receipts and I know how to have like the purchase price of everything, when I die and my family goes to sell it, they're not going to sort through all that. They're just going to get rid of it in the cheapest way possible. So it's not something I've really cared about.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or?
He also says, do you do anything to shelter against tax liability or have any suggestions to others about how to manage tax liability as a result of casually selling from your personal collection? As non-resellers, like, so we pay tax on the things we buy, but I still think you only pay tax on the difference between what you bought it for and what you sold it for. So as long as you have all the receipts of what you bought everything for and you keep track of that, put that in a database somewhere, when the eBay tax bill comes, you should be able to cut that down if you have receipts, right? Again, I don't sell on eBay enough for this to matter to me.
Yeah, I believe that's correct. But again, not a tax accountant by any stretch of the imagination. My one tip would be just to document the hell out of everything, all of your purchases. Keep it in nice, clean spreadsheets. Be able to produce all of that. You have physical receipts, take pictures of them, keep them. And again, you're not supposed to be paying double taxes on things. So you should be able to work with a CPA to get through that. Don't go to H&R Block for that kind of stuff. Actually go like hire a tax attorney for a little while. If you are going into the realm of like thousands of dollars, a tax attorney is expensive. I have had to hire one once and it like wasn't cheap, but you want to know what you're doing with your taxes. One, to make sure you are maximizing how much you get back and not overpaying. And then two, so you don't do anything silly and, get yourself got by the government, because that is the one thing that you can guarantee the government will come and find you for is taxes. So
well, the next administration might just dismantle the IRS and then we'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, who knows, Tyler? Who knows what's going to happen in the next administration?
So I think we're the wrong resource for this, just because we don't really sell that much. But you know who does sell things a lot and are in about that hustle, grind, set, flipping life is trading card people. I bet you could find so much information about how to correctly do your taxes from the trading card community, which is very similar to collectible video games. So
yeah, that's a good call out.
I would look up that.
Yep. I wouldn't ask like the whatnot people. I would ask like people who are a little more serious.
Yeah.
Even though there's big time people on whatnot, but like, you know, make sure you're not just make sure you're asking someone big.
Also, Steve of the Wired did clarify for us that yes, you only pay tax on the profit you make if you resell a game that you bought for less, but that doesn't wash with the losses you make. So if you sold something for $10 less than you bought it for, you can't like get a deduction on your other stuff.
Okay.
That's it, Johnny. Those are our questions.
All right, we did it. All right. Well, Tyler, well, let's move on to the last half of the show where we talk about what we bought and what we played. Tyler, what did you buy and what did you play coming into this New Year's in this beautiful 2025?
Johnny, it's been like an entire week of Christmas and now it's the week of New Year's. Like no one's doing anything. What are you guys buying games?
Yeah, a bunch. You didn't get any for Christmas?
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Red the Game Shark for my Secret Santa gift got me.
There you go.
Waifu Discovered. It's the sequel to Waifu Uncovered. It's not called Uncovered anymore. It's called like Discovered Waifu Discovered 2 or something like that.
Medieval fantasy or something like that.
It's a tongue-in-cheek.
Talk about it with a little more respect. That was a Christmas gift. Someone thought about that a long time for you, and they made sure to get you something. No, I love it
because I love the concept of adult games on a Nintendo platform. I think it is very funny. I think, like, looking at a set I consider boring, one of the more interesting things in the Nintendo Switch set would be an adult game, a very immature kind of nudie 2D shooter game. But you got me, or you helped Red, but yeah, you got me that, and then I don't have it here. It's the Nurse Love Addiction double pack from Limited Run Games that has both of the Nurse Love Addiction games, which are lesbian romance visual novels with questionable character ages according to their appearances, which fantastic. Red the Game Shark. Thank you for that. That's not even an adult rated game. That's like rated teen, so who is playing that adult game?
Definitely
Me,
adults,
course.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Johnny, I actually did get something exciting that I bought for myself.
Those other games weren't exciting, you liar.
I mean, those were some exciting games. You know, I do want to do an episode. We can make this the next episode you want. I want to do an episode on Switch games that Tyler actually thinks are interesting to collect. Because I would put the waifu games on there. Nurse Love Addiction, whatever. That's stupid, but the waifu games I'll put on there. Johnny, I got 1982's Nightlife by Koei for the PC 8801, one of the earliest commercial Japanese erotic computer games, and one of the first Koei games. Games? Is it a game? It is. It has like a catalog of sex positions and a period tracker for women. I'm not sure it's really a game as much as it is a piece of software. But it's a piece of eroge history for you people collecting the history of genres out there.
That is something.
Pretty cool. Rare early Koei stuff. I got this from Surugaya, who you got your copy of Cosmology of Kyoto from. So sometimes this weird rare stuff doesn't show up on Yahoo Auctions, but it does show up from some like the regular traditional Japanese resellers just on their website. They just get like this rare, really desirable stuff. And you'll overpay for it, but it might be the only way to get some of this stuff if you're impatient.
Sometimes you don't overpay. Sometimes it is competitive with what is being put on Yahoo Auctions, which is no longer Yahoo Auctions.
Oh, yeah, that's a weird thing. What did they rename it to? They gave it some terrible name like J Direct or something.
Yeah, something like that. Years of marketing down the tubes.
Yeah. Johnny, what have I been playing? The Bard's Tale on NES.
Oh, God. Why?
I want to play all the NES Western RPGs. I like. I mean, this is. It's a Western RPG,
play the
but
Xbox
the port was
remake
FCI.
afterwards.
No. I like the like breaking out graph paper and exploring maps type. I don't want the modern games.
Man, I played that game as a kid and I hated it. I just hated the Bard's Tale.
Well, you probably. Well, I mean, it's not a great game. First of all, there's that. But you also probably weren't making maps, so were you just, like, consistently lost and grinding and hating life?
Yeah, kinda. I mean, I came to this after like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, so
that's a mistake. You really gotta be in the mood to play a game like this. You can't just kind of like sit down and lean back and play. It's like it's a put in work type of game, and it's not fun. I don't know if I'd call like mapping graph dungeons fun unless the game designers specifically design the maps to kind of confuse you while you're mapping, and they add a lot of tricks into the map. That's the reason I really love Wizardry 2 on NES. They really design those maps to be interesting to map. There's a lot of like repeated areas to get you confused and lost and stuff like that. Anyway, Bard's Tale so far, not great. So Pool of Radiance on NES is a similar game that kind of feels like a low-level D&D campaign, which is kind of a cool game if you're into that. And then if you don't care about story or anything, Wizardry is just like a pure dungeon crawl. There's one dungeon, fucking explore the dungeon. And this feels like the worst elements of both of those games, and it's just a really mediocre dungeon crawler. So maybe just don't play the Bard's Tale. It's a game for nobody.
Excellent news.
It's my review of the Bard's Tale so far.
Okay, did you play anything else? No Balatro, no Factorio?
I've got 800 some hours in Factorio. Yep, Johnny, it's going.
All right.
Yes, we're still playing Factorio.
Nice. All right, Tyler, what did I buy? Well, I got Dragon Quest 3 for Christmas, the Switch version, so that was cool. And I bought some games, Tyler, that you are not going to be very interested in. Do you want to hear about them?
Yes.
For some reason, Tyler, my brain did something, and I think maybe my brain thinks it turned to 2015 instead of 2025, because I'm out here buying movie ticket variants and like weird chasing down weird PlayStation variants for no reason, like going deep on games like Ed, Edd and Eddy, and hey, finding out that Meet the Robinsons for the GameCube has a slipcover. Did you know this?
No, Johnny, off the top of my head, I could not tell you that Meet the Robinsons for the GameCube was a video game.
Well, it sure is, and it also happens to be a movie ticket variant, Tyler, but it also has a slipcover for the PlayStation 2 and the GameCube. I think the Xbox as well. Anyways, so I saw the PS2 one. I was like, that's weird. And I was marking down all the games I could find with slipcovers. I was like, okay. But this game, why does it have a slipcover? And then I realized why it had a slipcover is because this is how Buena Vista Games, Disney at the time, handled French text on their games. So like, oh, we got to release this in Canada. Instead of like redoing all this, we'll just print a cardboard slipcover and drop it over the game. So it's got a US ESRB underneath, and then the slipcover goes over, and it's got the French ESRB and the French and English text ESRB and French text on the back of the game. So yeah, that's a GameCube variant. I did not know. I guess someone identified it about 6 or 8 months ago or something. I found this out after I went and found it, but I was like, oh, cool new GameCube variants. I also found Flushed Away, Tyler. You interested in Flushed Away?
I'm very not interested in Flushed Away.
You don't like Aardman?
Aardman? Is that a character from Flushed Away? I didn't watch the Poop Rats movie. I'm sorry. It just did not interest me.
Aardman is like what's it called? Oh my god. Wallace and Gromit and Shaun the Sheep. That like claymation
Chicken Run, you might say.
Yeah, Chicken Run. Yes.
Yeah. No, I'm into the style. A movie about rats called Flushed Away that presumably has poop jokes in it. Just the opposite of something that would appeal to me.
I understand. Anyways, Aardman is the guy who makes them.
Okay.
The movies. Right? Anyways. So that's why you might care. I thought you might be into that kind of stuff. Anyways, hey, you like movie ticket variants on the GameCube that aren't listed at all anywhere? Doesn't even. So again, this is like a PlayStation 2 game that has a movie ticket call out on it. And I was like, okay, so let me go check the GameCube. And sure enough, Tyler, I found a GameCube one, but there's no call out on the GameCube game.
I don't have to worry about that because Johnny has a spreadsheet somewhere. If I ever cared about this, he's the one to ask.
Well, it's weird when I find GameCube variants because I've documented so many GameCube variants over my time. You know, I love this. GameCube might be my favorite system to collect stupid variants for. And a slipcover and then a movie ticket that I didn't know existed. And this led me down a whole rabbit hole. So there's also one on the DS, again, not called out. My hypothesis is that it's a sticker variant, and that's why I can't find it, because I can't find a sealed one that says it. But the DS one, Tyler, and the GBA one, again, not listed on the box anywhere, has to be a sticker. These ones are movie ticket variants, but guess what's interesting about them? So the GameCube has the ticket in it, and it's a loose ticket, so you'll know if the game has it. Usually the seller will show that kind of stuff. The PlayStation 2 and the GameCube one, US dollars on it. The DS one and the GBA one is Canadian dollars, and it shows the Canadian maple leaf. It's a variant of the fucking ticket. Why? I didn't know there was Canadian movie ticket variants to even exist.
You got to double check all your movie ticket variants, make sure they're all American now.
Well,
or
no,
you got to get both. You got to get both. Is that the answer?
I don't see. That's the thing. I don't think they coexist. I think it's like this one only has. There was only a movie ticket variant for Canada, not in the US on those systems.
Oh, all right. So you're all set.
So that yes, maybe, but that opens up the door for more games that you're just like definitely doesn't have a movie ticket variant. But the pool of games specifically in Canada that you would be checking is a lot smaller. So, anyways, it's a mess out there. And then I've been just going down the rabbit hole on like movie ticket variants, which led me down all kinds of other variants like Ed, and Eddie, which like has a DVD variant on the PS2, but not on the GameCube that I found, but it does have one on the Xbox, but the Xbox isn't an extra pack-in disc with like a 2-disc thing. It's got a cardboard sleeve, which is very similar to the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, which for the GameCube does have a cardboard sleeve and has the extra disc and is also available as an extra disc on the PlayStation 2. So why isn't it on the Xbox? It's all very confusing, Tyler. And it's, I found some trading card variants that I didn't know existed, and so many Transformers, the Fallen variants that you just don't even want to know about. Anyways, that's what I've been doing, like up till 3 a.m, documenting fucking variants. And I'm just like, okay, brain. I've done that for like the last 4 nights because I don't have to work right now and I can stay up late.
You could just send me the Ed, and Eddie variants. You're like, Tyler, you're a collector. You got to care about. I found a new Ed, and Eddie variant for the Nintendo DS. And I understand the feeling. You got to show somebody, Johnny. You could just send that to me. I will act more appreciative. I've been grumpy Tyler because I'm back at work.
All right. Well, here's another one. SpongeBob SquarePants variant with cheat code. I know there was one on the GBA, and there is a cheat code sticker also available on the GameCube. More common. Hey, and Teen Titans on the GameCube, while we're talking about it, did you know it comes with a TCG card, a promo card for the Teen Titans collectible game?
I don't remember.
Did you know?
I knew that. No.
And it's not listed anywhere. I've looked at a bunch of sealed ones, not listed. Maybe there's a sticker. Maybe they just throw it in the box and expect you to know. Maybe all of them have it. Maybe only a few of them have it. Who knows, Tyler? Anyways, that's a thing you can go get. Also, did you know that on PlayStation 2 games, like the SLUS code, right, that has it, sometimes has a little letter at the end of it, which indicates if it's like a promo? Like it'll be like P or T for theater, or P for promo item, or C for... So it's got all that. But did you know that that's not like consistent, and that was like kind of a thing that you could do or not do? So you just got a bunch of inconsistent information?
Great.
Love it. Anyways, that's what I learned. Did I play anything? Tyler, you know what? I didn't. You know why? Because instead of doing anything like playing games, I played a little bit of Indiana Jones, and I was going to watch Alien Romulus. That was on my list. Instead, at night when I've had the free time, my sons and wife's in bed, and I could go do this, What have I been doing? I've been toiling away, looking at fucking variants for some reason. Again, like it's 2015 and I've got nothing better to do with my life. This is what I've done. It's been madness over here. I can't wait to go back to work, I think, just to go back to normal.
Are you updating those spreadsheets though?
Yeah, yes, of course I am.
You got stuff that like WADA and CGC don't know about? Do you got the secret hot info? Probably, because you're looking at complete Linux variants.
I think I just said all of it. There are some Target exclusive variants I've been tracking because like there's a bunch of Target stuff that's never listed. Like this one came with a Target coupon code, so that meant it's a Target exclusive. Like I still have like an X-Men the game or the movie game for GameCube, which has a movie ticket in it, and I've never seen it mentioned or listed anywhere, so that's a fun variant.
Do you remember when I found that NBA Jam that had the sealed pack of cards at Portland? What was that? That must have been like 4 years ago almost. No,
it was like 6 years ago, Tyler.
Okay.
It was pre-COVID.
When I found that is when I set up a save search for the Target exclusive poster variant of NBA Jam. Because I'm like, well, I got the sealed card pack. Let me get the other cool sealed NBA Jam variant. I have not found the Target version that came with the poster of NBA Jam for the Sega Genesis. I found the boxes come up a few times, but it's never actually had the poster inside of it. So I've had that save search
for
now.
NBA Jam posters just to see if it comes in poster wise.
No, I don't care. I just want it all in one thing because the box is rare too. I'm not gonna go piece it together. Fuck that. But if it comes up all at once and I can snipe it from someone, I'll buy it.
Okay. Oh, hey Tyler. I said it on the show, but I got Gremlins for the 2600. I did it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that.
No, I was very happy. I was so excited to get that. Like that and Rusty came up so close to each other. It was like two big check marks off my list. I was very happy. Doing it, right, Tyler.
I'm happy.
Best Halloween collection in the world. Come fight me.
Is it?
If you're the Halloween king,
Guinness? Is it bigger than Antonio's?
Who's Antonio?
Is he the biggest video game collector?
I said Halloween.
Yeah, but he presumably has all the games you have because he has every game, right?
No. Shut up when you say stupid things like this to me. No. Tyler,
John, he's got over 24,000 video games. Presumably all the games you have and more.
Doubtful that he has these whole. You think he's got Rusty? If he's got Rusty, he should show it off. Because then I'd be like, well, fuck this guy. I don't care that all this shit's on the floor and in boxes and closets. Like this guy's got the good stuff.
Johnny.
Yeah.
In late November, a graded Max cartridge sold for $1,100.
Mm-hmm.
That's not down from COVID. That's low. I've ballparked Max as a $2,000 cartridge in my head for a while.
Yes.
$1,000 for a Max seems low. Are we at the bottom or are we just crashing through the floor?
Look, and I not to poo-poo anyone who may have just recently got a Max and showing it off or anything, but I don't know. They're I've seen all the people react to it, and the people who are reacting to it is all the people in the world who care about this kind of thing. And then even those people probably don't care the amount of money that it is. It's not an officially licensed game. It's not part of the retail set or anything.
Unofficially licensed games are what make them cool.
I own a Max cart, this, so it's I think it's cool enough to own, and I love the Super Nintendo, and getting the Target sim would be cool, but I don't know, it's software for the military, so it's okay.
So the moving target simulator, this in November sold for $7,000, and then
someone's got one on eBay for $20 right now.
So is that the rare one? Because then the $1,000 one was was it just Max version 1.1e?
Yeah, they're all basically
multi-purpose arcade simulator. So the moving target simulator must be a much rarer one.
Yeah, the target
I didn't realize that the price distinction was that big between them.
They're it used to not be that wide, and it's widened.
Crazy.
So, yeah.
All right. I'm going to go hunt for rare games that I think maybe people stopped caring about.
Oh, like Labyrinth?
Rusty.
Like
What was your example?
Labyrinth,
Labyrinth.
the computer game.
No, if that's that $1,300 and it's the only one available, I don't know. Someone knows to care about that.
Okay. Well, it's just like a rare computer game. I did forget to mention though, like, so the other version, the Famicom and MSX2 version, called like one's Labyrinth, the computer game. The other one is Labyrinth Mayo no Mikui, or just forgive me on all that Japanese pronunciation. Anyways, that one was made by Atlas. I forgot my fun fact about that one. So you got a Lucasfilm and an Atlas game in Labyrinth. Pretty cool.
Pretty cool. You don't have to care about Atlas games. I give everyone listening permission to not really care about Atlas games.
Ooh, I'm going to have to revoke that. You have to care about them. That's it for our show, Atlas everybody. Games. I'm telling you, I'm ending it. Tyler, you got to go to bed. You got to work. And I appreciate everyone who stayed up and listened to a listicle of how to collect the 80s. Thank you for your time. And thank you, as always, for hanging out with us. If you want to support the show further than just listening, and you don't have to, or you want to be a part of our Patreon, you can join, or you want to be a part of our Discord, you can join us on Patreon. And that's patreon.com/collectorsquest. But again, that's $4 if you want a month. If not, don't even worry about it. We appreciate you listening. I hope you guys have a great and wonderful new year and that everything goes well for you in 2025. All right, we'll talk to you next time. Bye!
Karate Kid on NES is an Atlas game and not published by, developed by, so you just don't have to care about it. All right, I'm leaving. I'm so tired. See ya.
All right. Bye, Tyler. Good night.